a Pickle Krug Show. John Lund is in the house. NFL free agency begins tomorrow. There's all kinds of headlines and exciting news that have come down on this Sunday, including many rumors and some things tied to the Niners. We're going to get to all of it right now. Join us. All right, welcome to the Krug Show. Sunday night, 8:06 West Coast, 11:06 East Coast. Hope everybody's having a great day. Happy March the 9th. I can't stand February, but I love March. I love March. Listened to some Cactus League baseball today. I took the dog on a nice long walk. Had a little birthday dinner with Kev. Took him out to a nice Italian place in downtown Walnut Creek. Real nice day. And now John Lund's in the house. And we're going to talk some Niner ball and some NFL free agency. Before we get it rolling, of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Brought to you by Sharp Corners, Sports Cards and Collectibles. If you're into sports cards and collectibles, check them out. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, right along the Monterey Peninsula. Anthony Catania is the owner. He's at 831-521-5264. And because it is March, we had our two spring training sponsors, Claw-Daddy Arcades. Follow them on Instagram at Claw_Daddy_Arcade. He's got an arcade opening in Northern California. You can check that out. And then our good friends at LearnKey Upskill Academy. The show is sponsored by them as well. They're an online learning platform designed to get you job ready in 6 months or less. So it doesn't matter what field you're interested in, IT, cybersecurity, sports radio, marketing, or another high demand field. They offer over 30 certification programs. They help you take that next step in your career. And guys, this is, the owner, Jeff, is a friend, and he's been in business for 37 years. They've helped over 200,000 students. They place hundreds of people every year into new, well-paying jobs in their field by getting them skilled through certification programs. So, if you're just, it could be anybody. It could be somebody. You could be doing your job, doing great, but you want to get a better job. It could be for you. You could be between jobs. You could be, somebody who's got a goal of a certain field. So check it out. The link's in the description. And thanks to LearnKey for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. Johnny, Sunday, a lot going on in the football world. Oh my gosh. I mean, let's just quickly give you the NFL rundown from today. Myles Garrett signs with Cleveland, $40 million a year. I will not play in Cleveland. I will not play on a losing team. I will not meet with Jimmy Haslam. Oh, $40 million AAV? Yes, I will stay in Cleveland, and I will play for Jimmy Haslam. Whether I talk to him or not is another thing, but I will stay there. So Myles Garrett, somehow money talks, and he's staying. Devontae Adams is now a Ram. Cooper Kupp's leaving. Devontae Adams is staying. And Tutu Atwell also signed for a 1-year, $10 million deal. So the Rams are going to have Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, and Devontae Adams. It's $23 million AAV on a 2-year deal for Adams. The Chiefs have re-signed their star inside linebacker, Nick Bolton. The Bills have signed Josh Allen to a monster 6-year, $330 million contract with $250 million in guarantees and an AAV of $55 million. So there you go. And then DK Metcalf traded, another guy. I do not want to play in cold weather. I want to be in warm weather. Oh, traded to the Steelers for a 2nd-round pick. And then wait for this one. Signs with the Steelers, 5 years, $150, $30 million AAV. And then in addition to that, the Bears are rumored to be making a huge free agent play for Drew Dahlman, who is a lot of Niner fans' main target in free agency, or at least want it to be in free agency. So that's what's going on NFL wise, and then there's a bunch of Niner notes that we're going to get to as well. But Johnny, what jumps out to you as far as the big moves of the day?
Well, and one more, Jamie and Sherwood re-signed with the Jets. That was a guy. Dahlman's going to be too expensive. You and I talked about that. The Josh Allen deal for $330 million, which is 55 a year, which if that's what Brock wants, that's interesting. But the ones that affect the 49ers are the ones that matter to me in what you just said, and we'll get into the Niners in a minute and all sorts of rumors. But Devontae Adams going to the Rams. He replaces Cooper Kupp. I don't think he's great, but they got him at a decent number with 2 years and $46 million. So that's an interesting one to me. And then what Seattle's doing is extremely interesting because Geno Smith goes to the Raiders for a third-round pick. DK goes to the Steelers for a second-round pick. So now Seattle, which a lot of people are misrepresenting this whole thing and saying they're rebuilding. They're not rebuilding. John Schneider doesn't rebuild in Seattle. No. What they're going to do is they're probably going to get Sam Darnold. They're going to get a couple of nice wide receivers to put with Jackson Smith and Jigba. They're going to do what every team is doing right now, which is put resources back into the trenches, which is all what we saw in the Super Bowl. This is a league, and sports are a entity of follow the leader of a bunch of sheep. Bah! And so what they're going to do is they're going to look at the Super Bowl tape and go, oh, geez, look at that. They dominated Kansas City in the offensive and defensive lines. Why are we paying wide receivers again? Which you and I were screaming about last year. Why are you paying Brandon Ayuk $30 million a year when wide receivers are a dime a dozen in the draft? You had the leverage over him. Jed York, I get that you're pissed off. You and I have been talking about this for weeks. It's not breaking news what Silver said. Everybody around the 49ers knew what was going on as far as that was concerned. And by the way, just as far as that goes, Jed York still has the same drive he did to win a Super Bowl. You're not an owner like Joe Lacob or Mark Cuban or the Dodgers, the Guggenheim Group, and all of a sudden you decide you don't want to win anymore. That's an inaccurate part of that article. But anyway, I digress. But as far as what Seattle is doing, I think it's really interesting because what they've decided is their offensive line and defensive line has sucked for so long that they just re-signed Ernest Jones. They re-signed Jaron Reed. They're going to go heavy into free agency. The kid from the Colts is probably number one on their list. That the guard, Freeze, is the guy. He's a really good offensive guard, probably the best. They're going to go after him with some of this money. They just freed up a ton of money. They released a bunch of guys that were a bunch of dead weight. These teams regret signing these wide receivers because the game's won on the inside, not the outside. And so all of a sudden, these guys like DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, all these guys are getting released, and they're going to go back inside, and they're going to do what they should have done the whole time, which is, and what the Niners used to do, which is go back to the trenches. So Seattle's not rebuilding. They're going into the trenches is what Seattle's doing. And Devontae Adams is a nice signing. He wanted to come to the Rams, and that's fine. The one team, I guess, that blows my mind that got neither of those guys, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, they have Ladd McConkey. They have nothing other than that. I thought they'd either get Devontae Adams or DK Metcalf, and they got neither. So, as you said, lots of movement. Tomorrow's going to be crazy, and the big question, as we'll get into right now, is, what's going to happen with Dre Greenlaw? What's going to happen with Hufanga? What's going on with Joey Bosa? Is that even a good move? Jonathan Allen gets released by Washington. So where are the Niners in all of this now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Niner-related headlines today as well. I mean, first of all, let's just roll through them quickly. I mean, they released Malik Collins, who actually played pretty well for them this year. So he's a cap.
So they have a plan inside. When you see this kind of stuff, like when everybody freaked out over Geno Smith, you don't let your quarterback go and not have a plan. The Seahawks aren't doing that, so they have a plan. But my point is that you don't let Malik Collins go. You don't basically just your interior of the defensive line is barren right now. They don't have anybody. Well, there's a plan. They have a plan, and they're going to take that money and they're going to reinvest it in it. So whether that's Jonathan Allen or they've got a plan, the Niners have a plan. Watch, I don't know what it is, but you don't just release everybody basically from the interior defensive line and then say, okay, I guess we'll just wing it. They're not winging it. There's a plan here.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the beginning. This is the beginning. So they're saying goodbye to Malik Collins. I've got no problem with that. I mean, the 49ers, to me, I did the offseason breakdown of what they needed, and to me, the number one spot where they have regressed significantly is the defensive tackle spot. I mean, there's no question. This team had DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead in Super Bowl 54, and now they've got Jordan Elliott and Malik Collins and Evan Anderson. I mean, they're nowhere near. They're like 4 or 5 levels beneath what they used to be. So in the wide nine, the ends set the edges, but you got to have inside linebackers that are studs, and you got to have defensive tackles that can come off blocks and make plays against the run, against athletic running backs, and they don't have that. So they looked really bad against the run. So, I wonder, there was a lot of talk about Ayuk, and we'll get into the Ayuk. Is he or isn't he going to be traded? But, I personally believe that Ayuk is going to be traded. There was some talk coming out of, a couple places that maybe it would be a pick swap with New England. And that could be interesting because, maybe the Niners have something working there. Maybe there is going to be some kind of a pick swap, and maybe the Niners are going to wind up with the 4th pick in the draft. And if they have the 4th pick in the draft, they're almost assuredly going to take Mason Graham, the big defensive tackle from Michigan. And then if you'd taken Mason Graham, you probably don't need Malik Collins, and you could probably begin your rebuild of your defense right there. The other factor is they're at 11. Maybe they aren't going to move Ayuk, or not at least in a deal involving moving up. And even if you stay at 11, I kind of think that between Kenneth Grant and Walter Nolan and, a couple other guys, but those two guys specifically, I mean, you could stay right at 11 and have a real great, idea that those two big-time defensive tackles are going to be there for you. You probably could even trade back a few spots if you were open-minded as to which one you got, knowing that you'd probably get one or the other, and still, you can move back 5 spots, add a couple extra picks on day 2 and day 3, and maybe get a defensive tackle. But I kind of look at the Malik Collins thing and the depth chart at defensive tackle. And I know offensive line is important, but I kind of think that, we'll see who's there at 11.
Well, we know who the Niners. We know what the Niners think of the offensive line. I don't think they're going to go early.
Yeah, I don't either. I think defensive tackle is what they do at 11, if you made me guess.
What's interesting, though, about defensive tackle to me is that it's not a premium position, and the 49ers failed at it the last time they tried this. Edge is a premium position, and if I'm the Niners and I get to 4, I'm going to find a way to get Abdul Carter. That's what I'm going to do, because he's an elite player.
If his foot's healthy.
Yeah, but here's the thing about Joey Bosa that everybody's got to understand. It's a great story. It's a wonderful story, and all these kind of things. Joey Bosa at 30. Okay, so he played in 14 of 17 games. He played in 49.6% of the snaps. He's a rotational player. So he was the 3rd overall pick. He's rookie of the year. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He has 73 career sacks. He's not Nick. Let's not get it wrong. He may start, and he's bigger than Nick, so he can play. He's a 3-down player, but he's going to rotate, man. And the reason why the Chargers did that is because the previous 2 years to that, he played in 5 and 9 games, and he has 14 sacks in the last 3 years. So everyone's getting all excited about Joey Bosa. He was the 72nd ranked Pro Football Focus edge defender last year, and he played in 49.6% of the snaps. And in the previous 2 years to that, he played in 55% of the games. He's not a guy that's going to get a ton of money. He's going to get an insane incentive-lative deal that probably starts at like $10 million base. And he's going to have to be rotated out. So, and it's going to be a 1-year deal. So if the 49ers are going to be in that range, and Daniel Jeremiah, you and I have talked about this a million times, and I know we're going to do a draft show, but Daniel Jeremiah said there's 24 starting defensive tackles in this draft. I'm not going to take one at 11 if that's the case. I got to get an elite edge player or something like that, because Joey Bosa, I think people are misunderstanding the Joey Bosa signing, which is he's not Nick Bosa, and even though he's only 30, he's probably playing for a 1-year make good opposite his brother, get double-digit sacks, which he hasn't had since 2021, and then go out and go to another team and do that kind of a thing. He's not a long-term solution. So if I'm the 49ers, I think it's great. I think the story is great, but I think people are misunderstanding. Joey Bosa is not an elite edge player in this league anymore. And if he is, that's great. It's a bonus, and he'll go out and get paid a bunch of money in 2026 by somebody else. But they have still got to make sure that long-term that position is something opposite Nick, because Joey's going to be a 1-year deal. And at that, because he doesn't play in games, and if he does play in games, he's a rotational player. You got to be careful with him to just say, okay, well, it's Joey and Nick, and they're going to go, they're going to meet at the quarterback 20 times a year combined. There's no guarantee to that.
No. I mean, he's 19th in the league as far as where he ranked PFF against the run. So his run grade is solid.
Yeah, he's
still really good against the run. He's a big-bodied guy.
But I mean, I'm not worried. He can't play that much.
I'm not worried about playing him in a rotation, because the bottom line is all these guys play in a rotation. I mean, nobody, the greatest defensive players in the league don't play every, on the front at least, don't play every snap. you got to have a rotation. I mean, I'm more concerned with what does it cost to get them, and does that preclude you from getting other guys? Because to
It
me,
better not.
you need a bunch of other guys. You
Yeah,
really
it
need to
better
invest
not.
in the draft.
And that's, you know, you and I have been talking about this, but the thing is that the only way I'm signing Joey Bosa is if it's incredibly favorable to me, the 49ers, because like I said, I think everybody's getting caught up in this and they think that it's something that it's not. He's a rotational player. He's like signing Leonard Floyd last year. And that shouldn't preclude the 49ers from doing anything other than that. And, you know, look, I don't think it would be a bad thing. And Joey's played the inside, you know, where they can do a NASCAR package where Joey's inside on passing downs, outside on run downs because he's good on the edge. Nick's on the other side. They move Joey inside as a defensive tackle on pass downs with Leonard Floyd on the outside. Now, I don't know if they can afford that. They may have to release Leonard Floyd. There's a number of guys in the defensive line that can save them money. Chief among them, you know, you're looking at some of those defensive tackles like we already saw with Malik Collins, but there's some underachievers that they can release too from there. So, you know, and it's all going to come down to this crew, which is free agency. You know, where Dre Greenlaw is right now, he's the best linebacker out there now. Ernest Jones re-signed with the Seahawks. Nick Bolton re-signed with Kansas City. Jamie and Sherwood re-signed with the Jets. That's bad news for the 49ers because now the best linebacker easily in the class, even though he's coming off an Achilles, is Dre. And so what that did was it's a basic supply and demand. There's not a whole lot of good linebackers out there because the three that I think were probably rated ahead of him just because of the injury are all off the board now. So if you need a linebacker and you want to do it in free agency, Dre Greenlaw's really the only elite linebacker left. And that's not good.
Well, you know, it's one of those things, and I put up a poll question about this on Twitter today. Who would be a smarter decision for the Niners, Dre Greenlaw or Jamie and Sherwood? I didn't realize Sherwood, I guess he hadn't signed this afternoon when I put it out, but he did re-sign with the Jets. But, you know, a lot of people were voting for Greenlaw, but bottom line is Greenlaw's an older player. Greenlaw's, you know, played 34 snaps this last year. He's an older player. He's beat up. I mean, I'll say this. I mean, I've looked at this draft a million ways already. And to me, the one area of this draft that I just think is just unbelievable is where they have a lot of the inside linebackers going. You know, just I'm looking at this list. There's the initial group, right? Jihad Campbell, Carson Schlesinger from UCLA, Demetrius Knight's my favorite of the top guys from South Carolina, but that's the top guys. And, you know, those guys are probably going first, second round, but then like, there's this big drop off down to like Jeffrey Bassa from Oregon, Shamar James from Florida, the kid who went to my high school in St. Ignatius, Teddy Buchanan from Cal. That's like the second group. But then if you go even further down the list, you got this really impressive group that includes Carson Bruner, who played at Wisconsin, who ran in the 4.5s, Casey Osai from Louisiana, Chandler Martin, the captain of the Memphis defense. He's really, really good. And guys like Eugene Asante and David Benda, and these guys are late round guys. I mean, these are not, you know, and a lot of these guys are a little bit undersized. Nick Martin from Oak State, Cody Simon from Ohio State, Kari Coleman from Ole Miss, the kid Madrano from UCLA who ran so well at the combine. Benda, as I mentioned, from Texas. A lot of these guys are 215 pounds or 5'11", or, you know, 210 pounds. And they look small, you know, 220. But that's the 6 feet, 220 is Nick Martin. Asante is awesome. He's 6 feet, 222. So I don't know. I know there's a lot of emotion with it. I personally, you know, am emotionally invested in Dre Greenlaw myself. I'll freely admit that. But if you really look at this thing objectively, the smarter play is probably let him walk. Let him walk, see if you can trade back in the draft, get yourself a couple extra picks, and draft 3 or 4 linebackers on day 3 of the draft, because that's where the value is. I much as I love Dre Greenlaw, I would much rather have, you know, Eugene Asante, Nick Martin, and David Benda on day 3, all who are fast and young and have a great future, compared to one more injury-filled year of Dre. I just don't think it makes sense. I mean, I love Dre, and I would love for him to stay and be like the guy who kind of passes on the how hard everybody plays. And I mean, he's a tone setting player. He's a culture player. But man, this draft is screaming on day 3 to go young at linebacker, and there's plenty of these guys out there. You only need 1 or 2 of them. And there's probably about 8 of these guys in this draft that are day 3 undersized linebackers who are all going to be damn good. So, as much as I love Dre, if he gets a big offer, I think you let him walk. I think they will.
Well, and he's not going to get any more than these guys got. They all essentially got the same amount of money. Ernest Jones got 3 and 33. It's all the guaranteed money. And then Bolton got 3 and 45, and Sherwood got in the 45 range as well. So they all got 3-year deals. I think the Seahawks got a screaming deal with Ernest Jones because he's a tackling machine, and he got 11, and the other guys got 15. So it's going to be in between that number, 11 and 15. But what people have to understand about these contracts too, and this Ayuk thing is cracking me up the whole time. They say it's 4 and 120. It's 3 and 76. The fourth year of Ayuk's contract goes to $42 million in the cap. He's never going to see that. So all people have to do, go to spotrack.com or over the cap, and when you see the number explode like crazy, contract's over. So like right now, Fred Warner's cap number is $29.2 million. He's not playing on that. They're going to redo it, and it's going to be in the 12 to 13 range. Kittle's number jumped from 12 to 22. He's not playing on that. It's going to get, $18 million is about the highest paid tight end. He's going to get that. So, how they do Dre Greenlaw's contract would be kind of a big deal. But I'm with you in terms of the way I look at the defense is, if I looked at just things they have to do, they've got to get an edge. And like I said, if and when they sign Bosa, that's a rotational player. And I don't think you're done there if you do that. As far as linebacker is concerned, that would be not my top priority, because I think I'd rather have DJ Reed. I'd rather have a third corner, because I think Renardo Green's nice. And I think that Diomino Lenore is very, very nice. But you need an adult in the room back there. I'm sorry, but Jared Brown is not going to get it done with Malik Mustafa. Those are 2 really young players. You and I have mentioned of Javon Holland. I think he's going to go way too much money, so I don't think he's going to be a 49er, even though he's from the Bay Area, as you and I have talked about a lot. But they got a lot of issues. And the interior of the defensive line, I just get a feeling that the 49ers are going to look at the interior of the defensive line, and there's not going to be a superstar or anything. I'd be surprised on Jonathan Allen. I'm not a huge fan, to be completely honest with you. Be a 1-year deal. He's played okay, not great. It always concerns me, and people think the free agency is this cure-all. It's not. It's flawed players making it to the market. Most players that are good players, they don't make it to market. Like we just talked about the 3 linebackers. At the last minute, Nick Bolton goes back to Kansas City, Ernest Jones goes back to Seattle, and Jamie Sherwood goes back to the Jets. The flawed players, for the most part, make it to free agency. Or there's a reason why. Either they're too old, too expensive, too inexperienced. You're going to get some gems every once in a while. Some of these young players that you're like, wow. I mean, but generally speaking, Drew Dahlman making $15 to $18 million, or some of these interior linemen. Heard Aaron Banks' name thrown around with $18 to $20 million. We want to talk about a fan base that's going to be disappointed. The fan base of this team that gives Aaron Banks $20 million a season. Remember last year, Robert Hunt got $100 million and Damian Lewis got like $80 million. Like, what are you doing? I mean, it's stupid money tomorrow, and hopefully the 49ers don't have to participate in it. But if you do that, Jalen Moore, for example, who you and I have sat in the booth forever and just like, he's gotten better. There's no doubt. Jalen Moore's gotten a lot better. But somebody who thinks that he's going to be a 17-game starter at left tackle is going to get their quarterback killed, and he's going to be gone in a year or 2. I mean, it's just brutal.
I'm really happy. I'm really happy for him, but I mean, he's a great guy. I mean, I love talking to the guy. He's a tremendous guy. But dude, look, I mean, this guy's just kind of hung around he's hung around. He's gotten a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. Now he's going to get like $50 million. I mean, it's just an amazing thing. And I'm happy for him. I really am. But
that's free agency in a nutshell. Is you're overpaying for these guys that for some reason all of a sudden they get so overhyped, and there's just drafting, developing, and re-signing is the way to go. And if you need to fill some cracks here and there, that's fine. But free agency is not going to save you. And if you look at the guys, and you just said this, and you just had the list in front of you of guys, a lot of these guys are just re-signing. Josh Allen gets an extension. Sherwood gets an extension. Ernest Jones extension. Jaron Reed, Nick Bolton. These guys are getting extended by their teams. Aaron Jones got extended today. These teams are trying to keep their best players off the market. Devontae Adams is a perfect example. I like Devontae Adams, man. The Rams are going to be, formidable with him and Puka Nacua, but he's not the guy that he was. And they're giving him, they're giving him $23 million a year. That's a hell of a lot of money. Devontae, as we saw in receiver last year, is a little bit of a pain in the ass. He's not running the way that he ran. He and Aaron Rodgers. It's gonna be interesting, man, because a lot of these guys are gonna get vastly overpaid. Like, I like Drew Dahlman. He's a really nice player, but someone's gonna pay him close to $20 million a year, and that just doesn't work.
No,
the teams make mistakes doing that.
I like the way the Packers attack free agency, which is don't build through the draft almost exclusively, and then just handpick a couple of guys.
Right,
handpick a couple of guys so that your culture doesn't
Philly
change.
Did, right? Look what Philly did.
Yeah, I mean, Philly had they got Barkley. They brought back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and they brought in Zach Bond, and
smart.
Those were smart moves. And they brought in Becton. I thought Becton was a really, really smart move. But yeah, that's how I'd play free agency if I were the Niners. It's just, go for 2 or 3 guys that you think can help you. I mean, DJ Jones, I think, would be nice because he is so strong against the run. Depending what the price tag is, he would be nice. Other than that, I mean, if you don't get Greenlaw, I mean, the only other linebacker, I don't even know if he's out there, but I like Willie Gay, the former Chief who's in New Orleans. He's super fast.
Yeah.
I thought the team that I liked their move was I like Gino. I like the John Schneider trading Gino for a 3rd round pick. Now they're talking about maybe talking to Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold. And they weren't going to win a championship with Gino, and they knew it.
40 to 45 million, and they're just like, God, no way.
And to send them to the Raiders, I mean, seriously, what are the Raiders going to just draft Shador at 6, and is that Gino's going to be their starter now, and then Shador's going to be their starter down the road?
Yeah, I think what they're doing is, everybody's at different places, and I think the Raiders are just trying to change culture. They need a culture change. And so I think Pete, that's what he does. I think Geno Smith does. But people don't realize that Geno Smith, he had a great first year in Seattle. He was really good. And then 2 years ago, he was just okay. And then last year, he sucked. I mean, he made so many bad decisions, especially in the red zone. He cost Seattle a couple of games. He was a Jekyll and Hyde kind of guy. And I'm not a Geno Smith guy. And so for them to get a 3rd round pick, and, again, everybody is so short-sighted. It's like, oh, my God, Seattle's rebuilding. What are they doing? You think Seattle traded Geno Smith and doesn't know what they're doing at quarterback? You think Sam Howell is going to be their quarterback? It's going to be Sam Darnold. Like, Sam Darnold's going to be the quarterback of the Seahawks, man. And they'll have traded a 3rd-round pick to jettison a 34-year-old, and then they're just going to sign Sam Darnold with the money or a little bit less, who's 27, and probably set them up for 5 years of the position. I'm not saying Sam Darnold's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but the way he looked last year and what we saw, you and I saw this in camp with the 49ers, the guy can play. So all of a sudden you get a 3rd round pick, and now Seattle's got pick 18 in the 1st round. They have 2 2s and 2 3s. And DK Metcalf's a pain in the butt who they weren't going to give over $30 million a year to. So then they just reset at the position. Wide receivers are a dime a dozen. The Niners should have done exactly what Seattle just did, which was, okay, we'll call the bluff. We're not paying $30 million for a receiver when we're already paying Deebo Samuel 25. It's stupid. They're a dime a dozen. You bring in Ricky Pearsall, you bring in JJ. A year ago, you could have brought in somebody else. This year, there's plenty of veteran wide receivers. Like, the NFL woke out of a drunken stupor and said, why the hell are we paying wide receivers $30 million a year? Are we insane?
They're plentiful. I mean,
that's what I mean.
It's one thing
all
to
these
do
guys got released and traded. And like a year ago, the Niners were under some kind of weird spell that we got to keep Ayuk. And it was like, and now Jed's pissed about it. And it's like, you're the one after Kyle ran up the stairs who said you'll give him the money. Like, that should have been the line. Like, the line, and people are getting this confused. The line is not going to be Brock Purdy. Brock's getting his money. The line should have been Ayuk, and the line was never going to be Bosa. And now Bosa's deal doesn't look so bad because Max Crosby just got 35.5 and Myles Garrett just got 40. So he's making 34. That's not so bad. He should feel better about that deal now. My God.
Well, and Kawakami reporting today that not only are the Niners releasing Malik Collins, they're showing a lot of interest in Joey Bosa, but the Dolphins are as well. I just wouldn't go. I wouldn't get involved in a bidding war. I know the Bosas love their money and this and that, but if he wants to come here for a reasonable deal, then that's one thing. But if Miami's going to get involved and it's going to be some, I know they're desperate. They had no sacks hardly at all this year. Once Phillips went down, Chubb went down, they got hurt. But if Miami's going to try to really drive up the price, I would say no to Joey Bosa. But it sounds like Mooney Ward's got 3 suitors. He's gone. Hufanga is likely to depart in free agency. Greenlaw wants the money that the Lions paid the Purdue linebacker, which is like 3 years, $25.5 million. And I don't think the Niners are going 3 years,
it's not a premium
million.
Position. I mean, you mentioned this a minute ago. I love Dre and the energy, and we saw it. Hufanga and Dre were on the field for 34 snaps, right, against the Rams, and then he got hurt again. It's not a premium position. I love Dre, man, but you just hit it right on the head. I don't love having rookie linebackers, but the reality is they have so much that they have to deal with defensively, and they brought Robert Saleh back for a reason. You got to coach these guys up. And I would have loved Sherwood from the beginning. You and I both were on him and Dahlman. I thought those were the 2 guys they could get. But Sherwood just got $45 million at 15 apiece. The Niners are never going to pay that. And Dahlman's going to be too expensive. They're going to have to go young in some areas. That's just when you're doing what the Niners are doing, which is they're not rebuilding. They're doing a little bit of retooling. But you're going to have to take chances and go young in certain positions. And so I think linebacker is a place next to Fred Warner where they may just have to go young, because I like Dre Greenlaw, but the days of giving out thank you contracts in sports, they're long gone. You can't give out thank you contracts, especially if you're the 49ers and you got to pay Dre and all these different things. So I like Dre Greenlaw, but you're coming off a major Achilles injury, and I can't ignore that. And that's, you just mentioned with Joey Bosa. The 49ers, people have to think about this for a second. When they win, what do they do? Or when they stay healthy, what do? They go to Super Bowls and NFC Championship games. When they aren't healthy, what do? They rocket to the bottom of the standings. I mean, that's Kyle and John. You can directly look at the injuries, and when they are healthy, they win. When they're not, they don't. Jimmy on down. So why would I want to chance Dre Greenlaw? Why would I want to chance Joey Bosa? Why would I want to go into a season and think to myself, these are a bunch of injured guys. Let me sign those guys. You're not Trent Baalke. Think about your health. When this team is healthy, they go to NFC Championship games and Super Bowls. When they're not, they suck. So don't bring injured guys aboard. It's a pretty simple concept.
Go young. I mean, go young. I don't get emotionally tied to football players because the careers are so short. As far as Greenlaw, I mean, if there's a replacement, a cheap replacement in free agency, I'd look for one. I'm looking. I'll give you a couple names. Jamin Davis, the former commander who went to the Jets this year, and he's only 26. He's a stack backer who he made $1 million this year. He's 26 years old. The Jets made him a down defensive end, kind of a Hassan Reddick type conversion. But he's an interesting player. I saw the Niners tied to him. I could see that being a name that makes a lot of sense. As far as other inside linebackers, if they let him go, if they let Dre Greenlaw walk away, it's a tough. There's not a lot of guys out there, but Akeem Davis Gaither from Cincinnati made $2.7 million. He's only 27. He's a pretty good player. And as I mentioned, Willie Gay's inside linebacker only made $3 million this year. He's also 27, and he played for the Saints. The Saints have huge cap problems. Those are the 2 guys I would knock on their door. I mean, Akeem Davis Gaither and Willie Gay. But as I said, I think there's 4 or 5 or 6 of these undersized linebackers that you could get in the draft that I think could do the job. The question is, can you get the big boys up front to make it happen? If you said to me, what do I think the Niners want to do in the draft? I think they would love to have Mason Graham. My guess is they would love to have Mason Graham, and he may fall to them because I don't think he tests all that well. The guy that I would love to have is either Walter Nolan or Kenneth Grant. The guy that supposedly they've told they're going to draft in round 2 is the UCLA edge rusher, Oladejo. We'll see if that comes to pass. I think he's probably more value in the 3rd round than the 2nd, but because there could be some really, really good players in the 2nd round. But I could see them going defensive tackle, defensive end to get things rolling. But I think if you're a Niner fan, get ready for Mooney's leaving, Greenlaw's likely leaving, Hufanga's leaving, Banks is leaving, Jalen Moore is going to get priced out, even though they supposedly are going to bid for him. I think he leaves. I think Joey Bosa may come. You may see a D4 or a DJ Jones. You may see a Jonathan Allen. I kind of view defensive tackle as the number one need. Give me a free agent, John, that you're thinking might be a fit for the Niners. Is there one out there that you look at as a potential fit?
Let me look at the list right here. You mentioned defensive tackle. I think they're going to go. There's a lot of defensive tackles in this draft, and I just don't think they're going to go early on a defensive tackle because they're so deep in that regard. A lot of these guys that I'm looking at are first read guys. Look, I like DJ Reed. I think he's probably going to price himself out. I like Javon Holland. You mentioned that. You mentioned Holland a lot of times. The kid with the Colts, the guard that he's been connected to the Seahawks. One guy that's underrated in my book. Well, actually, there's two as I look at the list. Trevon Moehrig is a guy that the Raiders had. I'd like a veteran safety because I just think they're so young. And if I was going to take a Chargers edge guy, I'd take Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack's the best edge rusher against the run in the game. He never misses games, even though he's 34. I don't know what the market is going to be for Khalil, but again, if you go back to Pro Football Focus, where Joey Bosa was the 72nd ranked edge guy, Khalil Mack was number 4. And some people are going to go back and look at Khalil Mack and say, well, he's 34. He's 34 and doesn't miss games. He plays all the time. He plays all the snaps. And could you imagine Khalil being on the outside? This is what I said with Joey a minute ago, but Khalil on the outside opposite Nick. And then on third down passing situations, Mack goes inside and Floyd stays on the outside. Mack is awesome. And even though he's 34, he's going to be a short-term guy, but it makes it so that you don't have to go early for an edge rusher. I love Khalil Mack. And if he at 34, a lot of people are going to get scared away by him. I don't know that he goes on the first day, but I think he would be an amazing get for the 49ers as I'm looking at these other ones.
I'll give you another defensive end that I think is a great one is Darrell Taylor. I think Darrell Taylor, he's $3.1 million. Yeah, he started with Seattle, went to Chicago. He's only 27, and he's just a crazy athlete. Really good edge rusher. I just think in the wide 9, I think he's made to play in that wide 9. He's big. He can get up the field. He's explosive. He'd be a guy I'd have a lot of interest in. I'll tell you another guy I'd have a lot of interest in, and I don't think they can get him. Azeez Ojulari. I think is really interesting.
They could get him. A lot of people. He was on the trade block last year, a kid out of Georgia, and I think as a developmental guy, I think he would be great. And he's been a guy who's put some sacks together. I agree with you 100%. See, I'd get a veteran guy like Mack if I could, and then I'd try to get a young guy too. And what free agency can be used for, if you're smart about it and you're not trying to get the day one guys, is to make it so that when you enter the draft, you're not so desperate. You don't have that stench of desperate. So it's like, okay, I'm sitting at 11 and I absolutely have to have a guard. You know what I mean? Right. I absolutely have to have a tackler. Absolutely. You don't want to go into the draft with absolutes, because what happens is Javon Kinlaw happens. It's because you're like, oh my God, we have this massive hole at defensive tackle. We let Buckner go. We traded him. And now we got to get Kinlaw. No, you should have drafted worse. That's what you should have done. And you should have worried about defensive tackle at some point. And if at least in free agency, you could have said to yourself that year, we have somebody who can at least fill in, then you'd be fine. So to your best of your ability, don't have these gaping needs. Like right now, when I look at guard, for example, like James Daniels is a guy that I've mentioned from the Steelers who's a road grader, and he's coming off an Achilles. So maybe I'm contradicting myself because I said no, Dre, because of an Achilles, but maybe he's a little bit cheaper. He's 27. You just don't want to have a gaping hole going into the draft so you panic. And you're sitting at 11 going, we need a guard, or we need a tackle, or we need whatever. We need a defensive tackle. Like, just, you got to walk in and go, okay, we can get by for a year with that guy. Who's the guy that's just going to fit us best long-term? Because I think that's what happened to them when they traded Buckner, which was they had to have Kinlaw. And the reality was there's Tristan Wirfs sitting in front of your face going, look, he's a much better player. And you just got to take him and figure it out rather than trying to reach for a guy because you have a position at need. That's a terrible place to be in.
Yeah, no question. And they need a whole array of defensive linemen. They really do. Yeah. I mean, especially, I'll give you another guy that I really like, and I've always liked him. He was in with the Chargers this year, and I know they want to bring him back. But I like Poona Ford. I like Poona Ford at Texas. Yeah, he was good at. He's a good run defender. I mean, he's just a very stout run defender. And if you're, somehow, some way, the Niners have to come out of this draft or out of this offseason. They got to be better at the point. They got to be able to run the ball on the goal line, and they got to be able to stop the run at the point. And right now, they really have not been able to do either. This last year, they couldn't stop anybody on short yardage. They couldn't stop anybody in the red zone. They couldn't run in the red zone. They couldn't run in short yardage. So I want to see Juice moved on, and I want to see them kind of move. I want to see another power back. I'll tell you, there's a back in this draft that the more I watch this guy, there's bigger, stronger guys. But I'm watching the combine, and Daniel Jeremiah said this guy's the best blocking back in the draft. And I know how much the Niners running back coach, Bobby T, loves. You got to be able to block. I mean, that's it for the Niners. I mean, it's an old school team. The receivers have got to block, and the running backs and have to be able to block. If you can't block, you can't play for Bobby T. And you can't play for Kyle Shanahan. You can't play for the Niners. That's a big part of what they do. And if you can find that, there's a great blocking back named Taj Boyd who plays for Texas Tech. And the guy is just, he's 5'9", 220. And he's just a bull. But he's great footwork, great stop and start, make you miss inside, move the pile. It's going to be like a 5th or 6th or 7th round pick. He's not going to be, he's a definite day 3 guy. Might be a 4th round pick. I think he's probably going to be in the 5th round, probably second half of the 5th round. But remember that name, Taj Boyd, just an amazing running back.
I think one of the things they made it too is because, like you said, I was looking at the numbers, and they'll save a good chunk of change when they let Juice go. I think they're going to release him. They need to get a move tight end, and I think he can do everything that what he's doing right now, what Juice is doing right now. And I know everybody loves Juice, but again, no more thank you contracts. I mean, I think again, things got misconstrued with Jed. Jed's not saying we're drawing the line at Brock Purdy. Jed's not saying at any of that stuff. It's the fringe and residual things that happen. So Kyle Juszczyk, I'm sorry, man, we can't afford you anymore. Those kind of things, those things that, when you're pulling the belt, when you're like, okay, we got less money. What are we going to do around here? Some of the things that, that vacation you were going to take, or the things that you buy, or the massages, or it's the things on the peripheral that you're saying, okay, we can't do this anymore. And with Kyle Juszczyk, I like the guy, and we all like the guy, but it's time to get a second tight end for George Kittle. It's way overdue, and this is a great draft for that. So find a guy that can be a second tight end and a move tight end who can block in the run game, who can actually get movement in the run game and go that route, because you don't need the Kyle Juszczyk anymore. So I think there's guys who can accomplish those kind of things, and it's frustrating. And just looking at this free agent list, like you talked about, for example, the second center on this list is Josh Myers, and he's just not impressive for Green Bay. And it's so frustrating because I don't want Jake Brundle coming back, but it's really hard to have a rookie center unless he's like a Creed Humphrey, who's just really, really elite. And he's been so great for Kansas City ever since they drafted him in the 2nd round. So there's a kid from Georgia, the kid Wilson, what did he run, like a 4.81 or something? I mean, the kid's a super athlete from Georgia.
You talking about Jared Wilson, the center?
Yeah, Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia, who ran in the 4.8.
Amazing.
Kid and he's 310 pounds at like 6'3", 310. So
yeah,
something like that maybe. And I know we're kind of comboing up the draft and free agency here, but what you have to do with this is you have to look and say, okay, who can help us in free agency? That way, we fill some holes. We don't panic in the draft and those kind of things. But what positions are deep and what positions aren't? I do think there's a guard in free agency or two that the 49ers could then plug in for Aaron Banks for a lot less money. And now they're not panicking at guard because you got Purdy and maybe a free agent guard. Brendel, I don't love, but maybe there's somebody in the draft you can pick out there, whether people like it or not. I mean, I think the tackles are pretty well set, at least for now, unless there's an all-worldly tackle that they believe. Like, I don't know what you think. You know this stuff a lot better than I do. The kid from Missouri, what is it, Mbu, the guy that's 6'4", 320, and he was a super athlete at the combine. Like,
he looks amazing.
If they love him that much, and he's what a lot of people are trying to say, then I have no problem taking him at 11. I understand that offensive linemen sometimes are like socks and underwear at Christmas. I mean, you don't love them, but you need them. So, you're signing Brock to all this money. You might not want to get him killed. So could this guy play guard for a season, kick out to left tackle when Trent is gone, and maybe that's a good thing. So if
Kevin
they love
Jenkins,
somebody at 11, but
Kevin Jenkins would be a great guard. The guard 27. From Chicago.
Yeah,
27.
He's only 27. He's had some injuries, but he's good when he's been healthy.
Yeah, Kevin Jenkins would be a guy I'd be looking at. I like Will Hernandez from the Arizona. I don't know if he's a good fit for their scheme, but I like him. He's a big, wide road grader. I love Mekhi Becton. I tell you,
did he move well enough?
Becton at guard.
Well enough in this system.
Well, probably not. Probably not. I mean, but
That's
they,
the only
it's
thing
funny.
I
They
thought with
they
him.
they seem to go towards bigger players later in the year, and I wonder if that's kind of a shift in their thinking. It'll be interesting to see what offensive lineman they invest in. But yeah, I mean, they definitely need to get out. They need to find some big road grading offensive linemen. I was on with Greg the other day. He loves Tyler Booker, the Alabama
Yeah, but you're
guard,
gonna have to
who's
take it. You're gonna have to take
just
him in the first round, and I
right.
just don't want
And
to do that.
I don't
I
want to
like
do
him
that
too.
either
I
because
think he's
even
really, really good. But the thing is that I mean, if you look at the guards right now, none of the guys who are guards right now. I mean, Becton's a free agent again, and he was a top pick, but you just don't get it. You don't have to take him in the first round. You just put Purdy in the third round. I think that's a waste because your thought process, if you're the Niners, whether people want to believe it or not, is that you're not going to be picking at 11 next year. You got a last place schedule. You're going to make the playoffs again, win 10, 11, 12 games, whatever it is. So what are you most desperate to get at that position? Because if you don't think you're going to be there, and look, if it's an elite left tackle, I can live with it. If it's an edge guy, if it's a really good corner that you don't think you can get in the late 20s, I think what you have to do is you have to target an elite position at 11. And like I said, I don't like taking tackles or guards or anything there, but if this kid out of Missouri is all that, and like I don't think that Will Campbell is going to be there, guys like that. And it's not a tackle draft like it was last year. Remember, like what was it, 3 guys in the top 11? I think it went in the draft last year at tackle. I don't see that happening again this year.
Will Campbell may fall because he does have short arms.
Yeah, everybody was saying that.
And that's interesting.
That's fine.
So,
Take him. I mean, I think
there's some
really
people
good.
that believe that the Will Campbell short arms has something to do with the Ayuk and New England, pick swap, where maybe New England feels like they could have gotten Will Campbell at 4, but now feel like they can get him at 11 and are willing to move down from 4 to 11 with the Niners to get Ayuk because they got so much cap room and they can get Campbell or Membu themselves at 11 or Kelvin Banks. And the Niners would probably move up to 4 and take either Abdul Carter or Mason Graham, which
if you could get Carter, man.
I mean, Carter's amazing for sure, but you know what? He's only 250, and most of the Chris Kasarik defensive ends in this wide 9 are closer to 270. I don't know if how they view Abdul Carter. I'll say this about Mason Graham. I mean, he was just an amazing player at Michigan. I mean, just an amazing player. He's a wrestler. He's got great quickness. He's like a 10-year veteran as a rookie. He's really, really veteran in so many ways. But a lot of people feel like there's limited upside there. I'll give you a couple guys that I think I'd be tempted to take at 11. One is Malachi Starks from Georgia. I watched so much Georgia football. That guy's, I don't care what he works out at, what his numbers are. That guy's awesome. I mean, he's a tremendous player. I mean, you want a great player at free safety opposite Malik Mustafa. You draft Malachi Starks and you've got your great player. There's no question. He to me is very, very safe. And then the other guy that to me is very, very safe is Jadaig Barron, the Thorpe Award winner.
Yeah, Texas.
He just, he doesn't miss tackles. He's kind of like a Brian Branch. He's like this awesome cover guy, but he's also really tough. And, I really like Jadaig Barron. So, I mean, those guys are absolute steals. And then, Jalon Walker from Georgia might be the best overall athlete in the entire thing. I mean, I don't know if he's an edge rusher. I mean, I just said Kasarik doesn't like small edge rushers, and this guy's probably an edge rusher, but he's 245. But this is one of the greatest athletes for sure. I mean, this guy is just an amazing closed down space, awesome stack backer, all pro inside backer type guy. Now, I don't know if you want to take a stack backer in the first round, but, that's, and then, so like, to me, it's like for the Niners, you sit there at 11, and if Mason Graham falls in your lap, great, you take him. If not, I mean, I think you could probably trade back a few spots and then take who's there between Walter Nolan and Kenneth Grant and start with the defensive tackle. Or you could start, you can move back and trade, start with an offensive lineman or a defensive end if you really thought somebody was there. I mean, the Ezeraku kid from Boston College is 6'2", 250. But man, he's just if you watch him, The arm length on this guy is unbelievable. The motor is off the charts. The 3-cone was the best. The guy dominated the combine. And so he dominated the combine, showed he was an amazing athlete. He dominated the regular season. He had 17 and a half sacks. He's a little small, but didn't the Niners just hire that other Boston College coach on their staff? So who knows? He maybe has some insight into Izaraku. I don't know. I'm not sure. I do think the Niners are probably, the only thing I trust is that the Niners like Oladejo in round 2.
Mm-hmm. I think what you do is you marry these two things together and you say, okay, what can free agency do for us? And it's really up in the air because I'm with you in terms of who they're going to lose. Look, Ward's wife has PTSD and can't come back into the state of California. There's no chance. Hufanga, you've already got a guy in Mustafa. He's not coming back. Drake Greenlaw, there seems to be some momentum, but like you said, it's a deep linebacker draft, and you can find linebackers, man. I'm sorry, you just can. So I'm not gonna panic over that one. I think that if you look at, it's really hard to find edge rushers. If they go Joey Bosa, then that's rotation, and you still need somebody, but not at 11. Again, Joey Bosa I think buys you at least a year, but I don't think it's great. The intense places that I think are going to be really hard. There's no interior defensive lineman in free agency unless you think Jonathan Allen is something, but he's 30 years old. And here's what makes you nervous about these kind of things and what I was talking about with free agency. Why doesn't Washington want him? Why is Washington allowing them to walk away? Well, the same reason the 49ers are allowing. That's what I mean. Is it so when you look at free agency, you have guys who are injured, you have guys who are old, you have guys who are expensive. There's issues. So Jonathan Allen in name, just like Joey Bosa in name, is amazing. And then you start drilling down into these guys. And whether you love Pro Football Focus or not, go back in Joey Bosa's case, because I did this during the week. The top 10 edge rushers are all the best ones. I mean, these numbers aren't fake. Nick Bosa is the 4th ranked edge. Myles Garrett is the 1st ranked edge. Aiden Hutchinson was the 2nd ranked edge. I mean, go on down the line. The top 10 edge guys by PFF are the top 10 edge guys. And Joey Bosa was 72nd. And his numbers were in the 60s, and those guys' numbers were in the 90s. It's accurate. And so the same thing with Jonathan Allen. He wasn't one of the top defensive tackles. He tore his pec. And then a 49er fan will come in and think, well, we're getting Jonathan Allen. You're getting 30-year-old Jonathan Allen off a major injury. And he might buy, but these guys most times can buy you a year. That's it. And then you better have yourself ready to do something. So it doesn't make me excited that Jonathan Allen is out there, or nor does it make me excited other than the story itself of Joey Bosa being out there. So I think they have to take select stabs, which I would say guard. I think, like you said, Tevin Jenkins is out there. Daniels from Steelers is out there. I think they can fill a guard slot, which is kind of what you do, and not have to worry about a Tyler Booker, who I really like. And now you're pretty well set, unless you think Drew Dahlman's number is going to drop. It's not. Josh Myers, I don't think, is a big enough upgrade. He's the 2nd-ranked center. So you're probably looking for a center there, which I don't love in the draft. But, so I think you marry these two things together. I don't think you're going to be able to find yourself a defensive tackle, even though they might sign Allen. If Greenlaw goes, I'd probably wait for the draft, maybe get a veteran, linebacker in there, things like that. The one thing, you and I have talked about this a lot, the one thing where you really don't want youth is at free safety, because if the free safety screws up, then you just gave up an 80-yarder. And that's where I would splurge for a Holland. I would look at a Morig. I would look at, there would be somebody, a veteran safety to me is really important, because Jair Brown has not shown that ability. He runs in the 4.6s. I don't love that on the back end. And Mustafa's going into a 2nd year, and Green's going into a 2nd year. And I like Demo, but that's an incredibly young secondary that's going to make some mistakes. I would love an adult at free safety.
I'll give you the name that to me is the dream candidate. Holland would be great, but I think he's going to be priced.
Yeah, he's going to be a day oneer, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine, by 10:30 tomorrow morning, we're going to hear him, signed to some massive deal.
Yeah.
But the guy that I think is maybe even a better fit, who might be a little cheaper, is Cam Bynum. The former Minnesota, former Cal Bear.
He got the picks off Brock, right?
He had the picks off Brock. He's only 26. He's got the corner background, but he's played free safety almost exclusively in the NFL. He's 4 years in the league. He's really competitive. He's got great ball skills. He probably would like to be here in the Bay Area since he went to Cal. So, I mean, a guy like that, to me, that
call right there.
Him and Paulson Adebo the corner from the
Yeah, he's
Saints.
interesting too. He's only 26, and I know he's been up and down in his career, and he certainly had injuries and so forth. But man, when he's played well, he's been really good. So if he's not, he's one of those guys that, yeah, you don't want to see anybody injured, but that might give the 49ers an opportunity to get him. And he's only 26. I'd much rather go with a young guy and try to take a risk than, again, try to recycle a guy that's 30 plus years old and at best is going to give me a year. And that's what I think Joey Bosa is. And that's what I think Jonathan Allen are. Is that if and I know they're going to be going for a Super Bowl run and all those kind of things, and I guess that just buys you a year. But I'd much rather go with a Bynum or something, or a Debo or something like that, with guys that are in their 20s, and I still think have a little bit of upside, even though in his case, he's had injuries and so forth. But like you said, he's a Stanford guy. You always got to look for connections when you're talking about free agency. Who do you know? Who's from around here? Those kind of things, and that a lot of times will lead you to where they're going to go.
One of the things that I think could benefit the Niners is this kind of belief that Kyle Shanahan is a kingmaker when it comes to quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Oh, Jimmy went to the Super Bowl. Brock went to the Super Bowl. Is now going to get paid handsomely. Darnold resuscitated his career. I could see there being a couple young quarterbacks who are like, you know what? I want to go there. You know what I mean? And I'm looking at the quarterbacks in free agency. I'm going to throw you the names. Some of these are unrealistic. These are the best quarterbacks out there. Do any of these guys fit the Niners as a number 2? Darnold is no, obviously. Zach Wilson. He's only 25. I won't say Trey Lance. Drew Lock.
It's so funny because we didn't talk about this before the show, and I can tell by your face. That's why I started laughing. I go, he's going to say Trey Lance.
No, I'm not. I won't even go there. Drew Lock, 28. Drew Lock had 5 touchdowns, I think, in the last game of the year this last year.
Who did he beat? Remember when he was with Seattle, and it was like a Sunday night game or something? He beat somebody, and I can't even remember the damn game, but it was a good team that he beat. And he was
played
Seattle,
well,
played really well
against the Niners for Seattle, I thought, in a game, 2 years ago? Then there's Justin Fields. There's Joe Flacco. There's Jameis Winston. There's Mac Jones. There's Carson Wentz. There is Russell Wilson.
Oh, God.
There's Daniel Jones.
I like Daniel Jones.
Desmond Ridder.
He's gonna get. You know what Daniel Jones is gonna do? He's gonna go to a team like the Colts or stay with the Vikings and watch the young guys flop. Like if I was a backup veteran quarterback, I'd go to the Colts because Anthony Richardson is there, and Anthony Richardson stinks. And so, like, if I'm Daniel Jones and I want a job eventually, I go to the Colts. Shane Steichen's there. He's do
you like Daniel Jones? Because Daniel Jones to me has made some of the worst plays I think I've ever seen a quarter. I mean, he just does not take care of the football.
No.
And there's also kind of like when I look at his face, John, I see kind of a fog.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that. You know what I mean? I'd rather have a guy who's mad than a guy who's in a fog. He looks like he's in a fog.
I think a lot of people
like
think
Locke.
I don't mind Locke. I think in Daniel Jones' case, I just think a lot of people think he's kind of the next thing in terms of turning around like a Baker Mayfield to Sam Darnold. He's got athleticism. He's got an arm. He's a smart guy. Went to Duke, whatever. Sixth overall pick. I think just getting out of New York is one of those kind of things. And if I were him, if he likes that, if he likes the Minnesota system, just stay there because all these people. It's funny. I keep hearing JJ. Oh, they love JJ McCarthy. He's never played a damn game. What do you know about him? He didn't throw the ball a ton at Michigan. I like J.D. McCarthy. I'm not saying I don't as a prospect, but I don't know anything about him.
No.
Nor do the Vikings. He's never played in a game. So, look, this is a team that won, 13, 14 games last year? That is a massive chance to say Sam Darnold, who played the way he played within that offense, because he had 2 bad games in the final 2 games, which is Detroit and in the playoff game. And I get it. He was terrible in those games. But if Seattle picks him up, and Seattle's got a 1, 2 2s, and 2 3s now, and they pick up Darnold, who's 27, instead of Geno at 34. I think that's a brilliant move. And all this, Seattle went 10-7 last year. They're not rebuilding. So, and I'm only bringing that up because they're in the division. But that's a pretty brilliant move. So, just back to what you said about the 49ers backup, I think they need a veteran, and this is the year, and everyone's going to freak out and think it's something because But you and I have talked about this, whether it's, Will Howard from Ohio State or Kyle McCord of Syracuse or a bunch of the Riley Leonard at Notre Dame.
I like him.
A bunch of these secondary quarterbacks are out there. And I think the 49ers, whether, around the 4th round or something like that, they got 3 4th-round picks. Use one of those. They might use them to move up and down the draft. They understand that. But if there's one of those secondary quarterbacks you like, and I'm not a Shedeur guy, I think Cam Ward's going to be better. But if you like one of those quarterbacks, take them. Just take them. And if one of those guys develops, who knows what you can do? Because when you have a quarterback
do you believe in any of those other young guys like Mac Jones or Zach Wilson? I believed in Fields until last year, and then last year I thought he was so bad.
And I don't get it. I just don't get people. They must not watch the game because look, he's a great runner. I give him that. He's an excellent athlete, great runner. But these people that are championing his cause, he's had so many chances to start, and he's not very good. And Russell Wilson sucked last year, and he kept him on the bench. So what must practice look like? And this is what people don't understand, who don't understand the game is, look, he could have beat out Russell Wilson at any point last year. He had plenty of time, and they were, Justin Fields. He's a great runner. But the league has shown you again and again and again, you have to win from the pocket. It's just how it is, man. And so, he couldn't take the job from Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson's like, oh God, who's going to, I mean, seriously, Russell Wilson's a backup. He's a backup at this point of his career. And it's just, and Justin Fields couldn't beat him out.
I wouldn't mind. Seriously. I mean, Fields, and seriously, they were better under Russell than they were under Fields.
They had no passing game with Fields. Brutal.
All right, couple last thoughts. We haven't touched on the Brandon Ayuk stuff. Mm-hmm. What's your read on the Brandon Ayuk thing? I mean, I know there was talk that the Niners will listen to offers for anybody. There was talk that New England maybe has some interest. It's like why would anybody have interest in a player who just signed that contract and had that kind of an injury? But there's obviously whispers that there might be an interested team. The one thing we don't know is we don't know what the price tag is. It's like, I don't think anybody's going to trade for him if you have to trade real stuff. But if the Niners really just want to get out from underneath the deal, and Lynch's comment to Chase Sr. at the Combine when he was asked about the Ayuk trade rumors, he was like, John, we've been doing this a long time. If John Lynch wanted to, I asked John Lynch, is there any scenario that you would trade Nick Bosa? Before I could even get the Bosa word out, he's like, no, absolutely not. He's going to be here. We're going to work it out. We'll figure it out. I'm not sure how or what, when, but no, we will not entertain. So then he gets asked at the Combine, what about Brandon Ayuk, trade rumors? He easily could have been like, you know what, that happens. And
he sidestepped it.
That happens all the time, which he did say. But we just signed him. He's our guy. He ain't going anywhere. That's it. On to the next question. He easily could have squashed it, and he has all kinds of motivation to squash it. Instead, he went into a diatribe about how they're second overall in cash spending, how they need to hit a reset, how they need to get this in line. And then he said, and you know what? There could be some positive that comes from this. We need to get younger. And then he said that. It was like he never said what this was, but it doesn't take a genius to see that if you think about what he was saying and how he was saying it and what he was, the question that he was actually asked, I think it sounds like John Lynch is on the verge of trading Brandon Ayuk for 50 cents on the dollar.
See, that becomes the issue, isn't it?
Because I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to prioritize retaining Jed's money over what's the best football move.
Right.
I think they're going to take, whatever they can get and get down the road. If that's Ayuk and a 4th for a 3rd and a 7th, then they'll do it. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a big price.
I think the problem is the issue becomes this: is number one, It's just like the stock market. Why would you trade, as you just said, 50 cents on the dollar? His market value will never, never, never be lower than this. So you're trading his stock at a very low stock. He was a first round pick last year. You wanted a first round pick, probably could have gotten at least a second round pick from New England, which was a high 2. So that's about as good as you could do. DK Metcalf today went to the Steelers for a 2. He's not better than DK Metcalf, and he's not better than a healthy DK Metcalf after a guy coming off a knee. So his value is, because he's coming off the injury too, is as low as it's ever going to be. So if I'm the Niners, I don't know that I want to trade at that point. Second of all, oh yeah, who's going to catch the football? Ricky Pearsall, who's unproven. Juwan Jennings, who's on the last year of his deal. You better go scramble for wide receivers for Brock Purdy, who you just signed. So that is a major problem. And to me, the last one becomes, if you're already up against it, and I understand, Jed, but this is business. You can't take it personally. You're going to then you've already taken a $31 million cap hit on Debo. That's offset by the salary. So, but net, that's a minus 15. Same thing with Ayuk. It's a minus 18 offset by the salary. So Ayuk is going to cost you 11 to go play for another team. They've already got $65 million in dead cap of guys who aren't going to be on the team this next year. Hargrave is on it. Eric Armstead is still on it. Ward is going to is got a $12 million cap hit, dead money hit. So these guys have over $60 million in dead cap, which leads the league. You're going to add another 11 million. It's 18 million dead, but with the salary, it's going to offset to 11 million, and you're already paying Debo net 15 not to play for you. So for those 3 reasons, I think it's horrible. And if you were going to trade him, then why didn't you could you have gotten a second from the Steelers? I don't think so, because DK Metcalf went there and he's going to be a better situation. The only team, like you said, that is really screaming and dying for a wide receiver is New England, and they're sitting at 4. If I'm New England, do I trade 4 for 11 in Ayuk? That doesn't make any sense to me, because you need a receiver for Drake May from day one. And when's Ayuk coming back? Like week 3 or 4, maybe? I just don't see it. And that's where
you're not going anywhere if you're New England.
Right.
I don't know.
I guess what I'm saying, though, is they blew their chance. And I get it that the Jet is mad, but you blew your chance. Like, you should have done it last offseason, because there was both the supply and demand. You had a guy, and there were just a few teams that were in on it. And Brandon, you kept screwing you around, and I'd be pissed too if I were him, because it's like,
I don't think these guys like. I don't think they like each other.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100% that they don't. But I think what Jed has to understand is, as mad as he is about this whole situation, is that it's business, and you can't take it personal. If you do, you start being like Al Davis, benching Marcus Allen for an entire season just because you're pissed off. And I think that if I'm the Niners, the business side of it is, you're going to pay net 11 for him not to play for you this year, and you're already paying Debo that and a bunch of other guys on this team. You have no receivers if you trade him. I'm sorry, but Ricky Pearsall to me is still a wild card. I don't know what Ricky Pearsall is, and I like Juwan Jennings, but he's a 4-7 guy, so now you have nobody.
But don't you need a receiver whether he's here or not? Because
but I think receiver wise, if we look into that from a free agency standpoint, if you were going to trade Ayuk, you should have traded him already, even this offseason, because then what that would have done is, okay, so you get hit with another cap hit, but then also you just missed out on Devontae Adams. Cooper Kupp nobody's signing Cooper Kupp, because Cooper Kupp's money is too high, so he's going to be on the free agent market. There's all these guys that are going off the market. You were never going to get.
But Lynch is a smart guy. Then why wouldn't he know all these things and just say, you know what, he ain't going anywhere? Instead, he added fuel to the fire, because he basically was like, we need to hit the reset, and then we need to hit the reset, and that's going to be a good thing, really, because we need to get younger. We're one of the oldest teams in football. What's he talking about there? I mean, the question was about Ayuk. Well,
he's talking about the and I agree with you. I thought the same thing, because he sidestepped it. We all know this. They spent $344 million for a 6-11 team, and I think what Jed did was kind of like Joe Lacob did with the Warriors, and said, "Look, if I'm in a championship window, I'll spend. But if I'm a 6-11 football team, why would I do that?" Now Joe got Jimmy Butler, and he went, "Okay, I think we're back in a championship window. I'll give Jimmy Butler a 2-year extension." I think Jed York is kind of sitting back and waiting to see what the team is doing. But while they're waiting, as far as making a decision on Brandon Ayuk, if that is still a decision they're going to make, receivers are coming off the board, like receivers that could help you. So if you've decided you don't like Brandon Ayuk enough to where you say, we'll just take a 4th or a pick swap, or we'll do something, that's fine. But you're going to take another cap hit on it, a negative cap hit. You're going to have to go out and get a receiver. And right now, receivers, like a lot of these teams, are deciding okay, you know what? We erred last year. The year of the receiver was 2024. The year of 2025 is undoing the year of the receiver. Meanwhile, Devontae Adams is coming off the board. He wanted to come to the West Coast. He goes to the Rams. Then last week, you should have said, damn, let's get rid of Brandon Ayuk for a fourth and let's call Devontae Adams as fast as we can. But they didn't do that. Or they didn't at least get an offer, because I don't know how you can trade an injured guy like that and get anything of value. That's where my problem comes in. And you're going to have to eat more money. I mean, that's pretty major. And then you have to replace him and get a receiver. And what receiver is going to be that? Especially given that, okay, you're at 11. Is McMillan going to get there? Do you trust a receiver? Do you want Burden at 11? To me, it's not the receiver draft of a year ago. Now, if you're talking about, Neighbors and Harrison and guys like that, I didn't know Brian Thomas Jr. was going to be that good. But let's just say that you're the Niners and a guy like Neighbors was going to be there around 6. Now you got to go up and get that guy. But there isn't that guy unless you think McMillan's that guy. So,
I mean, Luther Burden's pretty special, but he's not worthy of taking at 11, not in my mind. Jeremy Fowler is reporting tonight on X the Broncos are close to a deal for DJ Jones at around $13 million per year. Denver trying to keep the core piece before free agency. They know how good he is. They know how good he is.
That one hurts, because that's one where, like you said, I don't think they need to go after superstar defensive tackles. They just need guys who can do their job in there. And then hopefully if they get Joey, then he can be a lot better than he's been. But, you get those edge guys out there, stop the run, do those kind of things. DJ Jones knows this place. He's workmanlike. Kasaric likes him. Does it say any kind of numbers on him? Because that's too bad. That's a bad one. That's a bad one.
$13 million a year, maybe. Oof. 13 mil.
That's a lot, man.
That is
a lot.
It's what he left for. It's what he got when he left.
See, I see that, and they can't do that. They're not going to go 13 million on interior defensive tackles. It's not a premium position. They're not in the point where they can spend that kind of money.
Let's finish up talking about the big story of the week. In the wake of a 6-11 season, Mike Silver wrote about it this week that there's more significant changes going on behind the scenes with the Niners than maybe people realized. He's going all in is out. The coach driven emotion is no longer a guiding principle.
That first part's wrong. The first part's wrong.
Going all in.
Yeah. Jed York, just like I know Jed York. Do you think that all of a sudden Jed, who's been driven by trying to win that 6th Super Bowl forever and ever and ever and ever, is all they're going to sudden, because I read the piece, and all of a sudden say, it's not that important to me anymore. Never mind. He's a disciple of Eddie D. That's not the way it's going. Now, the other things he said in the article, I think, are completely accurate in terms of they're gonna look at things differently. They're not going to go, there's certain dumb things that they've done in the past that are kind of hair triggered, like running up the stairs and keeping Brandon Ayuk. Those things are going to get in check. But the part where he says that Jed doesn't have a burning desire to win a Super Bowl is inaccurate.
Well, I mean, that, who knows? I mean, I don't know.
No, I've talked to enough people down there that know that it's like me and you have a core principle.
I'll give him that.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you and I in our life have a core principle, right? And then all of a sudden we just decide that's not important to us anymore. That's not really how it works. And so I agree with probably 80% of what Silver wrote there. And I'm not saying that he's inaccurate in whomever he spoke with down there, but I'm just saying but to try to say that Jed York still isn't burning to win a Super Bowl. You and I have been down there for how many years and done those pregame shows and done all that kind of stuff and been around this team. And there is something you can actually feel in the air. I'm not even lying. And you know this. I call it a desperation. They're desperate. There's an urgency. There's something. It's not
going to change their lives. It will change the life. You and I
agree on this.
Jed.
You and I agree on this.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling. And you go down there and there's a tension. It's not positive. I'm not saying it's a positive. I'm saying you go down there and there's a tension and you feel it. And because they want to win so badly. And so that's not going to change. Now, maybe how they go about it or doing some of the stupid things or the balls you know what I mean?
Shanahan is a head coach and a GM are the middle managers. Who's the boss? The boss is the owner. Okay.
Yeah.
The owner is the boss. The general manager and the head coach are middle managers. This always happens in sports. It's like, is the manager of a baseball team, is he loyal to the guys in his dugout in his clubhouse, or is he loyal to the GM? Well, he's got to be loyal to both, right? Because he's got to motivate his players to play. but one or the other. It's got to be the ownership. It's got to be the general manager. If you're the manager of the team, if you're Bob Melvin, you got to be loyal to Buster. I mean, you got to be loyal to Bailey and all those guys, but you got to be loyal to Buster first. And the same thing here. It's like John and Jed have got to be loyal to, or John and Kyle have got to be loyal to Jed first and the players second. And maybe there was a belief that, they were maybe a little cavalier with Jed's money and more about, very tight with their players. And maybe they're all about getting their players paid. And now they're attempting to be more cold, more calculating, more analytical when it comes to roster decisions, and they're trying to do an organizational reset while at the same time paying Brock Purdy, which is going to be interesting. He says that there, Silver's reporting also added that there was an early training camp tiff between Ayuk and Shanahan that fueled some buyer's remorse
about the shorts and all that dumb stuff.
Well, that was in season. I mean, that was before the Patriots game. And they basically that says that Silver wrote about how the Niners want to reel in Shanahan's kind of emotional approach to player evaluation. Joe Banner told us this last year on that 33rd team soundbite when he said, "Hey, when you get into Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, there is no escaping that." And we saw it with Jimmy Ward. I mean, Jimmy Ward walked away. He was a really valuable player. They should have retained him. He walked away for 1 year and $6 million. So he didn't walk away for money. He walked away because he was pissed at Shanahan and Shanahan was pissed at him. But I mean, that was one of their best, most versatile, most valuable defensive players who you could argue have never really replaced. And so some of Kyle's emotional, breakdowns of some of the relationships he has, I think can be a bad thing. I think Kyle's a great coach. Just coach. Let Lynch draft, and to have Lynch in the draft mode, to have Kyle in the coach mode, and to have Parag, who's a little bit more cutthroat, a little bit more analytical, a little bit colder, handling the negotiations. I get no problem with that. I really don't. John Lynch, he's a smart guy, smart enough. It's not about intelligence, but he's a personnel guy. Let him do the personnel side. Let Parag do all the negotiation. It's easier for Lynch and Shanahan, who are kind of in a foxhole with these players and coaches on the planes, and you can see it on the field. They're slapping skins and talking, high-fiving guys, and they're tight with their guys. Okay, let Parag be the bad guy then. You know what I mean? It's hard to be the contract negotiator if you're also slapping skins on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. It's hard.
Yeah, no, I think some of it is absolutely accurate, and Mike's a great writer and has been around the Niners a long time. The only exception I took with it is it doesn't mean that Jed wants to win any less, and that he said that in the piece or intimated it in the piece, and that's not the truth. I know that for a fact. It's just not the truth. Now, what you mean is the line is not going to be drawn with Brock Purdy. The line should have been drawn with Brandon Ayuk, but you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I think that there are a lot of reasons why they won't trade him. Now, a year from now, if Brandon Ayuk is healthy and he's still pissed off, then the number goes down from 18 million of dead to 12 million of dead, and the deal's really a 3-year, $76 million deal. So to be honest with you, it's not even that bad of a deal, because when DK signed, it was 3 and 72 before this last deal that he just did. McLaurin signed for 3 and 70, and DK Metcalf, or excuse me, not DK, Debo signed for 3 and 72 like 3-4 years ago. That was the market for those receivers. So actually, Ayuk's deal was in line with all that stuff, because, like I said, the 4th year of his deal jumps to $42 million. He's never going to see that number. He's never going to see that number. So that deal is over, and they can get out after 3 years of Brandon Ayuk for $9 million. That's it, which isn't anything in today's NFL. So the way Parag did it was brilliant, and the agent gets to say he got him 4 and 120, which they really didn't. So it's not that egregious of a deal. I just think that, as Mike put it, and this is where he's 100% accurate, I believe, is that, he got pushed to the wall against Nick Bosa. He got pushed to the wall against Ayuk. He's going to get pushed damn hard against the wall by Brock Purdy. It's just how it is. And everybody who sits there, like, I got into it. I didn't get into it because I just don't respond. But I just said, I looked at the thing with Geno Smith. He's going to get $45 million at 34 from the Raiders. Brock's getting his 55 to 60. It's just, that's the way it's going to go. And these Raider fans who didn't, probably hated Geno Smith an hour before, were sitting there going, he's just as good. He's 34. He's a bridge quarterback. Brock's 25 and he's a franchise quarterback. If Geno's getting 45, Brock's getting 55. And I realized that Josh Allen got 55 over 6 years, 55 a year, but he got 250 million guaranteed, which is now the highest guarantee in NFL history. It's not how much you get, it's how much is guaranteed, which means you're really going to get it. So what Brock gets, 55 a year, is going to be probably far different than what is guaranteed and how they can get out of the contract and all those kind of things. But Brock's going to get the money. I think what Jed's pissed off about is, regardless of how that thing is structured, Jed York will be the author of the biggest increase in NFL history of a salary. He's making $1 million. So he's going to get an AAV in the 50s. And so it's going to be seen as you just gave away this big fat contract to pick 262. And it's starting to piss him off for a 6-11 team. And I understand that. But that by no way means and correlates to Jed not wanting to win. And I think that 49er fans are looking at that going, so does he not want to win anymore? He wants to win, but like you said, Krug, it's about ROI sometimes. Where's my return on investment? And so I don't think it's going to affect Brock, but don't you think I think it's going to affect like a Dre Greenlaw more than it's going to affect a Brock Purdy.
I just don't know that Jed and Parag getting more involved is a good thing. Period.
I don't agree. I agree with that 100%.
I mean, I show me what rings are those guys wearing? You know, I mean, Niner Goat 16 says Purdy is 7-13 since the Ravens game on Christmas. Purdy is not it. Well, I don't know about the Purdy is not it part, but the stat is the stat, and it's a fact. 7-13 since the Ravens game. Does that make you want to let him play this year at $5 million? Or maybe let him play this year at $5 million and franchise him next year at $41 million? And then somewhere along the line there, when it shows itself a little bit more clearly, make the investment then. Should the Niners not be forcing themselves into now is the offseason to do this? Should they gamble a little bit and make Brock prove it again? 7-13 since the Ravens game. Should they wait? Is it more prudent to wait than it is to sign him this year?
Well, let's look at it like this. If this is where I think Jed kind of gets pissed, is because when Kyle Shanahan in the end of the year press conference, and you were sitting right there at dead center, lapdogs Brock Purdy and says how much he loves him and licks him up and down, and that makes negotiation a little bit more difficult because the agent's sitting there going, "That's awesome. He just said he loves him and is going to be here as long as we're going to be here." You don't say that in negotiations. You don't give all this guy accolades and praise when you know that you're going to have to negotiate with him in a little while. So if they wanted to do something, here's what I would have done if I had the Niners. Okay, you want to do what Seattle just did? But you rarely see it. It was a really ballsy move by Seattle to say, look, we have a starting quarterback who's not so bad. You want $45 million at 34, Geno Smith? We're not doing that. So we're going to go. And this is very, very rare. You have a guy in Sam Darnold who threw 35 touchdown passes last year, and he won't cost you 60. Now, he may cost you between 35 and 40, but he's not going to cost you 60 or 55. So if you really were pissed off and up against the wall and didn't want Brock, you could have done what Seattle did. You could have auctioned out. You could have called, because let's be honest, tampering is going on right now. When deals get signed at 12:01 tomorrow and everyone goes, God, that must have been the best negotiator of all time. That got done in a minute. It's going to happen. So what could be going on or should be going on if I'm the 49ers is I'm calling those teams with picks in the top 10 who need a quarterback, like the Jets at 7, and saying, hey, man, New Orleans, the Raiders, any of those teams. Well, the Raiders don't anymore, Geno Smith, but I'm calling those teams who need a quarterback but aren't in the range of Shedeur or Cam Ward and say, you want Brock Purdy? We'll give you Brock Purdy. And then I'm already on the horn with Sam Darnold. I'm saying, Sam, don't you want to come back? I mean, we resurrected your career. Go get Sam Darnold for 35 or 40 a year and show the balls that Seattle did to say that quarterback wants that money. We're not giving him that money, but we're not hearing that. Now, maybe that is going to happen, but I think Sam Darnold's going to Seattle. I think they made a brilliant move in not giving Geno Smith at 34 that money. They're going to get a 27-year-old Sam Darnold, who I think is better. They're going to pay less, and they're going to be set at the position longer. If they really didn't want to pay Brock, because there's rarely this situation where there's actually a viable quarterback where you could have an option and some leverage. Whereas the 49ers, as soon as he's off the market, there's no other quarterback like that. So if you didn't want to pay Brock 55 to 60, you could have done that. You could have auctioned off Brock Purdy quietly, and you could have done a deal with Darnold's people behind the scenes. And you don't think Sam Darnold, who's from Southern California, would have come up and played for Kyle Shanahan again? But I don't think they're going to do that.
No, it doesn't sound like it. Okay. And the thing about the Jed and Parag being more involved, it's like, we'll see how this works out. We'll see how this works out. Some people said it's the beginning of the end for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. I just think it's, what, you don't get forever. Okay. That's it. Okay. I'm sorry, some of these people, who work for the government, who lost their jobs, but guess what? Most people in the private sector, you don't do what you do get to do forever. All right.
Good call.
And it's you have to produce, and Kyle Shanahan's no different. He's done some great things here. They've gone to a couple Super Bowls, but they're now in their 9th year and they haven't achieved the goal, which is to win the Super Bowl. So I get it. I get it that Jed wants to tighten the screws and let's make sure that the expenditures are smart. And, I do think they'll keep spending. I do think Jed's, as passionate as ever about winning a championship. But I also think that, he's keenly aware that John has not been perfect as a general manager, that Kyle has not been perfect as a head coach. And they've had their flaws. So I think this is just kind of like a refocused kind of a deal where Kyle, you're a great play caller, call plays. John, you've had a great success in the draft on day 3 and after the draft. Get with your scouts and have another banner draft, and let's let Parag hammer out these agreements, and hopefully he can get it done on time. What makes me scared as hell is that the Niners are trying to be, we're going to be tough right at a time where they're trying to get a major contract done with a guy who holds really all the bottom line leverage on the year. Because if Brock Purdy holds out, the Niners aren't winning anything. And I think everybody understands that. So, it's on. It's on. I mean, Brock's going to say all the right things, but his agent's going to be the bad guy, and we'll see if this deal gets done. Let's hit some supers, and then we'll bolt for the door here. We got a bunch of people who want to weigh in via the supers. We got this one. This is not a super, but Josh says 55 million. Josh, 55 million. Brock, 45 million. Sounds about right all of a sudden. This is a super from Jim Mole. What's up, Jimmy? He says, LD, I'm just assuming the Niners will be back next year. Should I be preparing for more of a rebuild? No, I don't think so.
The last place schedule, unless they have injuries again. They don't. They should win the division.
Yeah, they're in the mix. They're in the mix. They may get beat in the playoffs, but they're going to the playoffs. I would feel very confident in saying that. MF says Larry Krueger, Saban, Sabalos analysis. Go. This is the Giants outfielder who they acquired this offseason from the Braves, I believe. And this was a guy who was a high school kid from Puerto Rico, and then he went to San Jacinto Junior College. And then he got drafted by the Angels in 22, and he climbed to the 3rd round. The Braves took him on the heels of his 333 season, and he hit well for them, and then came to the Giants in a move. And he's a pretty good athletic outfielder, and he went deep, I think, in the spring. So look for Saban Sabalos. I don't think he's going to make the team out of spring training, but he's a pretty strong offensive player. And, we're talking about a guy who's got pretty good size and speed too. 6'3", 225, pretty good power, pretty good speed. So interesting guy for sure. Watch for him, I guess, later this summer. The guy who looks great in Giants camp is Luis Matos. Luis Matos is amazing. We got that one. We got this one from Jameson Wang. He says, Krug, my girlfriend is about to get in the car.
It was like an hour
ago. She's going to make me turn you off. So get it in gear and start this thing. Sorry, Jameson. And you got to win her over. MF said Larry interviewed Casey Schmidt. I did. Casey Schmidt went deep today. I really like Casey Schmidt.
He's having a good spring.
He looks good. Todd Cases, tell Sac State, DJ Jones, D-line at 11, and it's on. Tell Sac State. That sucks that
DJ's going back to Denver. That would have been not that I thought that he was going to come here necessarily, but I kind of had that. All these guys that are, because we forget, not just the Niners cap went up, everybody's cap went up. So that hurt the Niners because everybody's numbers going up. Like, I like DJ Jones, but at 30, he's going to get 15 a year.
This is also not the beginning of free agency. The guys know you got to get your money. You got to get your money. It's not show friends, it's show business. Rick James, I say we try to get Hendricks, Trey Hendrickson, I think he's talking about, draft the ISU or the LSU tackle.
Campbell.
Which one's he talking about? Emory Jones,
Campbell,
maybe?
Huh?
What's that?
Will Campbell, right?
Then second defensive tackle, maybe Bosa for a year. All right. I like that. We got L. Kurtz in the house. He says draft a kicker or a punter at 11.
This is not Al Davis. There will be no Janikowski. There will be no Ray Guy.
Jesus. Boxing fan times 4. Patriots are willing to move off of pick number 4 for number 11 in BA. That's a question mark. I find that hard to believe. If
he was healthy, maybe, but not. He's not.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a guy from New England, Tom Kern, this week, and he said, if it was something later, like the Patriots have 2 third-round picks and 3 sevenths. If you traded Ayuk in a 4th, maybe you would get like their 2/3, something like that. And maybe a guy like Davin Godchaux, who would be a real strong 49er veteran defensive tackle run defender. Yeah. So that would help. That could fit. Andre Hanna. Hey, Krugs, do you believe the Niners have somewhat showed their hand with their draft plan with letting go of Hargrave and Collins, going heavy early rounds on D-line drafting? The Niners go D-tackle a ton. So I could see them going D-tackle. It makes me wonder if they know Mason Graham's going to fall to them, or if they have a plan to get up to get him, because I thought they would move off of a couple defensive linemen, but I thought Collins, after that year where he was pretty strong, would be brought back. The fact they're moving off of him makes me think that they might be hot on the trail of Jonathan Allen, and maybe they're going defensive tackle.
I think you're right on. I think it means something about Jonathan Allen, because people have to understand, like, that's what I mean, is people freaked out yesterday on Seattle. Like, they don't have a plan at quarterback. Like, they don't have a plan to replace DK. Remember, they just let Lockett go. They let Lockett go, and they just traded DK. Do you think Seattle doesn't have a plan at receiver? Do you think they don't have a plan at quarterback? You don't just do things and have no plan. Oh, my God, what do we do now? Like, the Niners are releasing these guys because, in Hargrave's case, it just wasn't working, and you're not going to compound the problem. And like you said, Malik Collins, to me, early in the season, remember last year, preseason, and he was shedding guys, and then early in the season, he was playing really, really well. And then he just got progressively worse and looked tired, and just he wasn't very good. And so they're just looking at it going, okay, A, we can save money on this thing, and B, he just doesn't fit what we're trying to do. So let's move on. But I agree with your premise where you said this tells me, because you're not going to just rely on drafting defensive tackles, even though it's a good defensive tackle draft. They're probably now going to go out and get Jonathan Allen, who I don't love, but I think can fill in for a year.
This next super is pretty amazing. Makes you wonder. Talk about, you want to see the Niner world just explode. I mean,
look at your face, sir. You can't wait.
Think about this for a second. I'm going to put this up there, but just think about this for a second. If the Niners signed this guy tomorrow, oh my God. I mean, it would just be an explosion.
Oh, no.
LD Studios, Justin Fields, just watch. John, here's the thing. Brock's people are asking for too much money.
Yep.
You need a second quarterback. Fields is like, I love Shanahan. I just need to get in a good offense. I've been in a run offense in Pittsburgh, and I've been in a bad offense in Chicago. I need to play for it. I need what Sam Darnold got. I need the rehab. Okay, go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
One move, Justin Fields. The Niners have leverage against Purdy. They have a brand new quarterback debate. They have another, young quarterback. They have their backup. Fields has a direction. He's not the starter. It would just be, I mean, it's like
the only issue.
I mean, what do you think? What do you think if you would? I mean, you want to play if the Niners really are. I mean, what the talk is that the new shift in the management is the Niners are going to start playing GD hardball with negotiations. You want to play GD hardball with your quarterback? Go sign a good young quarterback like Fields and take away the holdout from Brock Purdy and his agent. You want to hold out? No, you will not be holding out because we will be going with Josh. We'll be going with Justin Fields.
I think they're going to start playing hardball with guys like Greenlaw and things like that. Everybody says they're going to play hardball, but they don't ever do it with the superstars. One of the reasons I don't think it's going to be Fields is because, remember, he came out in the same draft as Trey Lance, and they went to Fields pro day. And when they were coming back on the plane, Kyle Shanahan was drawing up plays for Trey Lance. I don't think he would work in this offense. He is a terrible. He is the anti-Brock in every way that you could be. So as far as being a backup, because your offense would have to be so drastically different, it wouldn't work. Like you mentioned Flacco before. Flacco can see it, rip it, not like he was, like he used to, but he can see it, rip it, understands where the ball's supposed to go. That's what Kyle wants. Kyle's ego is so gigantic that Kyle wants the play to be played like Kyle drew up. And so if you don't do the play like Kyle said, he goes bonkers. Well, so what does Justin Fields do? He does one read, doesn't see it, runs. Doesn't see it, runs. And he's a great runner, but he was drafted in the same draft. They could have had Fields at 3 instead of Trey Lance, and they didn't
Don't you
like
think
him.
This would make Brock Purdy uncomfortable?
I do if there was a fit, though, right?
I kind of think that the best plan for the Niners, period, across the board, is let's make everybody uncomfortable. No more comfort. There's a lot of comfort around there.
Yeah. I think if there was a better fit
this year, I almost puked this year. We're talking to Forster. Oh, I love Brent.
Yeah, I know.
We're talking to Shanahan. Talking to Sorensen. Love Campbell. Are you kidding me? He's a veteran. He's a this. He's a that. Everybody loved everybody except the team wasn't any good. So how about let's strip Kyle of his personnel duties. Let's strip John of his contract negotiation duties. Let's put another quarterback that can play the position instead of Brock Purdy on the roster. Let's start to make people uncomfortable, and let's see if that works better than
if I was gonna throw a name out, even though I don't like him. But just to go back to that draft of, just to talk about these quarterbacks, go back to the draft. Weren't they originally going to take Mac Jones? He's a pocket quarterback. He could do the things people say that Brock could do. I mean, if you're going to take a guy from the draft that fits what the 49ers do, it would be him. I don't like him.
Well, okay, let's talk about I agree with you.
I'm saying that is because Justin Fields is so different than Brock. He could not be more different. He doesn't see it. He doesn't rip it, and he runs. And so what Kyle wants is see it, rip it. See it, rip it. Well, Justin Fields is the opposite of that.
Okay, so I agree. But here's the thing. I agree with you. But look at, like, a lot of people would say, oh, Brandon Allen's very similar to Brock Purdy. But then when you watch Brandon Allen couldn't run at all.
Right. I don't like him at
all. And the one thing I will say after watching Brock Purdy and watching the NFL evolve in the last couple of years, I think movement ability is a prerequisite.
Well, look at Steve all the time, right? Steve Young is constantly saying the free yards that they give you. And I don't disagree with him. I think that Kyle, when he drafted Lance, thought that that's what he was going to get. He thought he was going to get those free yards, and Brock can get it sometimes, but Fields can get it. I'm not a Fields guy. And
I'm not either, especially this last year.
Because he just doesn't see it. He's been in the league long enough to where he should be seeing it and ripping it. And I think that's a problem. But I'm with you. Look, if I could find a guy, that's why I think Daniel Jones is going to have suitors, because he is an athlete. People like him. I wouldn't mind him being the backup here. I'm not thinking that, but he's not going to give you leverage. Like that's, when Les Snead came
Fields
out.
would, don't you think?
I don't know. It's kind of like saying that, when Les Snead came out to Diana Rossini, I don't know why she reported this because it was so stupid, but it was like, you'd go tell Stafford's camp we're fine with Jimmy G to start. It's like, shut up. Here you are not. That's not leverage. Like, you're not going to get leverage. And so that's the same thing as if, let's say the Niners get it to Brock that, we're okay with, we signed Fields or we signed Mac Jones or we signed Zach Wilson or we're fine with one of those guys being our starter. And Brock's camp's going to go, no, you're not. Like, we don't believe you. So
that's why Fields is so interesting to me, because what would Fields look like in Kyle's offense?
As a running back?
Well, no, he's a 4-4 flat quarterback who is accurate. He just, as you said, he's terrible in the red zone because he doesn't throw with any anticipation. He doesn't see the windows opening up. He sees them too late. He's reactionary in his reading of the field, and he just doesn't see it. But I wonder if you put him on a team with great weapons and a great play caller, and would he be able to get the ball out of his hands and start to develop a rhythm? I don't know. I never saw that rhythm in Pittsburgh. I just never did. He wasn't horrible. He just wasn't good in the red zone. We got this one from Niner Goat 16. He says Seattle cover 3 defense made history 3 times, 10+ point Super Bowl, fourth quarter leads blown. Time for a change. Julian Edelman clowned the defense. Yeah,
he's talking about the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, they. You know what? They talked about this. They talked about this, and again, you were there at the press conference. He was asked point blank, and he likes this defense. And by bringing in Robert Saleh, this is what Robert Saleh does. So will you make variations from what Pete and the Seahawks did and what from the Niners did? Sure, there's always variations to it, but you're not going to be a Mike McDonald where Mike McDonald is like they have like an amoeba defense where depending on who they're playing week to week, they're going to change up what they do. The Niners are going to do what they do. It's just a matter of you and I have talked about this the entire show. Your personnel has got to be better.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you can have the greatest DC, you can have the greatest defensive game plan. If your defensive tackles were the crap that they threw out there last year, and Dre Greenlaw and Devondre Campbell's chasing guys down the sideline, and all you can see is his back. I don't care what your defensive game plan is, you're going to suck, and that's what they did.
No question about it. We got that one with this one I hear from Pib, who says Lund knows. I think he will be a defensive monster this year. Who's he talking about?
Sure.
That was from 9:43. That was only 4 minutes ago. Andrew Bogert says, "Pay Brock. It's make him and
make him confident.
Make him confident. He's the guy.
They're gonna pay him. I mean, I think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't think that there's any doubt about it, unless tomorrow something crazy happens and Sam Darnold becomes a 49er and all of a sudden Brock's on the market. But that's what Seattle just did. I give Seattle a ton of credit because most teams, what they do is even if they don't have a great one, if they have a good one, they keep them because if you don't have at least a good one, you can't go anywhere. Your guy look at Miami last year. Tua gets hurt, Skylar Thompson or whoever, Tyler Huntley, whoever. If you don't have a competent quarterback, you can't go anywhere. It's like being stuck in the mud and stuck in the snow at the same time. Like you're going absolutely positively nowhere. Josh Allen or not Josh Allen. Just when the Niners. It's proven through time, even when Jimmy got hurt. Kyle Shanahan, when he's got a healthy quarterback, he's all right. But guys get hurt, good night.
It's interesting. LD Studio says Pittsburgh only had one wide receiver, Fields. Watch. The one thing I'll say about this
and that, I wouldn't even say they had one because George Pickens. Oh
yeah, he's got his own issues. But it is interesting. It was 2 years ago. What was it? When they started free agency with Sam Darnold by adding Sam Darnold.
You're right. That's a good point by you.
And
you're right.
I the way Kyle thinks about quarterbacks, will he start free agency tomorrow with Fields? Mm-hmm. And how much discussion would there be? I mean, you want to talk about throwing a smoke bomb into the room. If the Niners sign Justin Fields on the first day of free agency, it would absolutely rock the world. I mean, it would. I mean, I could do a stream tomorrow with.
You could do it for 24 straight hours.
It'd be 10,000 people in the room.
Yeah. No, it'd be interesting. I don't think they're drawing the line there. I think that people are misconstruing what the article was that Silver wrote. He's gonna draw the line, but it's like everything. You draw the line at mediocre players. I'll show them. I'm gonna kick this guy off the team. Well, yeah, he's not he got a DUI. He's out of here. Yeah, okay. Your superstar player's not out of here, but I get it. You treat everybody differently. I think what that means is if Dre Greenlaw wants $1 over what the 49ers are thinking he's worth, there's no Dre Greenlaw. There's not a lot of examples because Hufanga is going to be way over that line. But what I'm saying is if there's a player that they don't think is worth it, they're not going to pay said player, but the quarterback is a different situation because there is a viable option. Sam Darnold is a viable option for the 49ers, and they should look into it because that's what Seattle did. They said, Geno Smith is not worth $45 million, and there's a viable option. There's actually two. I think Aaron Rodgers is absolutely positively done. But if you thought you were in a, like people are talking about Aaron Rodgers to Seattle, I couldn't see that. I certainly couldn't see Aaron Rodgers to the Niners just because the ego of Rodgers and the ego of Kyle in one room, the ego of those two guys couldn't fit in the Bay Area, let alone in the building. So because Aaron Rodgers would be like, hey, Kyle, I got this offense. And Kyle saying, no, you'll run my offense. And Aaron will say, I know what I'm doing. Get away from me. And it's going to be a problem.
How about
so that's not going to happen.
Joseph Ehrenberg. Zach Wilson would do amazing here, I think. Zach Wilson was good at BYU. He really was. He's been bad in the pros. We got Prince Mason, Brock for 2 first rounders.
You know what's wrong with Zach Wilson too is he's got that arrogance about him. Where most guys get humbled after a while. Like Trey has really been humbled, and certain guys, and they realize that they got a lot of work to do. Like Zach Wilson walks around like he's throwing 50 touchdowns a year.
Right.
Like it's just a weird thing about it. It's like you see Zach Wilson and he's like, "Yeah, man."
He's like, "I'm cool, like, man. I'm cool."
Like I don't know. Maybe I'm
bro,
because I'm not around him. But man, it's like this.
He
guy,
does seem like he's got it going on. It's like, dude, did I miss the Super Bowl you won? Invader 49ers says I take Purdy over Cam Ward. Is Tennessee going to get nervous about Cam Ward and Shador and offer the number 1 pick for Brock Purdy? And if they did, John, if you're John Lynch, what do you do?
Well, that's a damn good question. I think that's better than Fields because the Fields question, because you and I know this. First round in the NFL draft is 50-50. Brock Purdy, you may not think that Brock Purdy's that great, but he's a top 10 NFL quarterback. When he's playing well, when he has all his weapons around him, when everything is right, Brock Purdy is a top 10 NFL quarterback. And I don't know what Cam Ward's going to be. I don't know what Shador. I'm not a Shador Sanders guy. I don't think Jackson Dart should be that high, even though I saw Charles Davis put him 3rd, I think, in the draft. He went 1, 2, 3 on quarterbacks, and they get pushed up. But you and I have talked about this a million times. We both watch a ton of college football. I watched Cam Ward a ton at Washington State. Not one time did I hear Cam Ward was going to be the first pick in the draft when he was at Washington State. He goes to Miami in a high-profile program for 1 year with really good receivers, by the way, and a really good running back. And all of a sudden, he's going to be the top pick in the draft. Like, that's a pretty big ascension. Did you ever hear Cam Ward as a first-round pick, let alone the first overall pick when he was at Washington State? I mean, he was good.
No, and I called some guys up in Seattle this week, and I'm like, what do you think of Cam Ward? And they said, he's a huge ego, and he was just, like, really difficult to get along with at Wazoo. Now, I loved watching him this year at Miami, and there's something really magical about him.
Like that Cal game this year, he was great.
Oh, I was there.
Yeah, he was great.
The other thing, he kind of reminds me of Lamar from the standpoint of he runs with poise.
Mm-hmm.
So like when he runs and guys are after him, he's like Lamar. He's not panicked. He's under control. He's calm. So I there's something about Cam Ward that's really special. But I still though, there's a failure rate of quarterbacks. You mentioned it off the rip here, and there's no question that there's a lot of hit and miss there. So Brock Purdy is a much more of a sure thing than Cam Ward or Shador Sanders at this juncture. And I'm not a Jackson Dart guy myself. I like 2 quarterbacks in this draft outside of Cam. I like Cam. But I also like Riley Leonard from Notre Dame. I see a little magic there, and I like Brady Cook from Missouri, who's got great mobility. Brock Purdy ran a 1.54 10-yard split. Brady Cook ran a 1.53. So he's quick.
Well, let's just for some fun, teams in the top 10 in Tennessee, Cleveland, Dijon. Okay, so let's just say for the sake of conversation, the Jets called. They have no quarterback. The Jets call at 7 and say, "Hey, Brock Purdy for this pick." Do you take 7? I mean, let's say Sanders and Ward are off the board, which they probably are. And, free agency's already happened. So, I mean, if the Jets call it 7, do you want to trade Purdy for the 7th pick? Because I bet the Jets would do it. Like, if I'm the Jets, I've been looking for a quarterback forever. Purdy's a top 10 quarterback in the league. He's not going to be,
I'd try to pick Garrett Wilson off or something as well.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, there's teams here. New Orleans is at 9. They're going to keep Derek Carr. Then you start getting to some teams where, you start getting too late in the draft. But anyway, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league, and you're going to pay him like it. And I know that Jet is pissed off about it, but the line won't be drawn at Brock, it's going to be drawn at other players. And that's why I think that Dre Greenlaw, and especially given this is something you and I talked about at the beginning, if people missed it, Nick Bolton resigns, Ernest Jones resigns, Sherwood, the kid with the Jets, re-signs. All of a sudden, the best linebacker on the market easily right now, there's not one even close, is Dre Greenlaw. So it's basic leverage. The 49ers probably, I read this today, 3 and 24 is what they wanted to give him. All those linebackers that I just mentioned made between $12 and $15 million. And so that's the market for Dre Greenlaw. It's $12 to $15 million. What I'm saying about the line is if it comes out that some team is willing to offer Dre 3 and 45, which is what I think Nick Bolton got and what Jamel Sherwood got, then I think he's an ex-49er. And I think that's what Jed's talking about the line is we have to pay Brock. We know that. And Dre Greenlaw is a really important part of this team, but not at 15 when we wanted to pay him 8. I think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. No, I do too. We have this one from Eric Darby. He says, Krug, what splash trade signing happens this year? John, you want to venture a guess as to what splash
as far as the Niners go?
I'll say this. This is all I know that I can take to the bank. There's so many people who lie, right? So many people lie about.
Did you see what John Schneider said right before? 10 days ago at the Combine, he goes, "Oh yeah, we're keeping Geno. It's lying season 24/7, 365. Everybody, just so everybody knows." I mean, he literally told Mike Florio. Mike Florio goes, "So Chris Sims is sitting right there 10 days ago. Hey, so you're keeping Geno, right? Oh yeah, we love Geno. We're keeping him." 10 days later, he trades into the Raiders. So yeah. So anyway, continue on. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it's lying season, right? So there's a lot of lying that goes on, but there's the one guy that I do know that is tied in with the Niners and doesn't lie is my friend Tony Pauline. He says that the Niners are going for Oluwafemi Oladejo from UCLA in the second round, and I would say there's a very good chance it probably wouldn't be on the second round. It'd probably be more like the third round, but I think on day 2, Oladejo to the Niners is a high likelihood. The other thing that Tony said, he's only had 2 revelations on the Niners. The other one was that the Niners are going, and this was very specific, the Niners are going to go corner, wide receiver, and offensive line in free agency. So I think DJ Reed is coming back.
Sense.
I think DJ Reed's coming back. I really do. I think he's going to be their big money expenditure. He's going to be the guy that they go after where you go, oh, wow, they really spent some money there. I think DJ Reed, they like him. They know him. He's valuable. He's just a really, really good football player. He's really one of the most underrated corners in pro football. He's played with Saleh. The Niners drafted him. Yeah, I think DJ Reed, if I had to say, give me the free agent signing that's, I would, if I had to predict the Niners free agent signings, I would say DJ Reed, probably Tevin Jenkins. I'll say him, the Bears guard, and I'll say Rondale Moore, the wide receiver, and maybe Elijah Moore, but one of those Moores that can run.
I'll go out on a limb and say safety. I think safety is a really important position. Mustafa's going to play strong safety, but I don't trust Jair Brown. And you mentioned DJ Reed, and I'll say it for the same reason. DJ Reed is a lot like Diamonor Lenore. They got attitudes and everything like that, but they need somebody on the back end with some experience, and they just can't go in, I don't think, with as young of a secondary as they have. So is Holland going to be too expensive? Probably. Morrig, the kid from the Raiders, I really like him. Came in at TCU, was really well thought of, and it took him a little bit of time to get going, but he's a nice player.
Yeah, he's good. I like that.
And I don't think he's going to break the bank, but then you always say that, and then you see a guy, and you're like, God, I didn't think he was going to get that. So, I could be wrong because there could be teams sitting in the weeds, but I'm trying to think of somebody who's not a day oneer that's not going to get just so much money, because tomorrow at this time, you and I are going to be sitting there going, man, Dahlman got paid, or, some of these guys that we didn't think were going to get as much money. Because the number went up. The number went up, and there's a lot of teams. New England's got a boatload of money. They're going to overpay people. The Raiders have a bunch of money. They're going to overpay, although they just took on some with Geno. Seattle now, all of a sudden, Seattle released half their damn team. Draymond Jones, guys like that. They released so many guys. Now they re-signed Jaron Reed. They re-signed Ernest Jones, but the contract to Geno Smith, contract to DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf was owed no more guaranteed money, so he's out. He was a $31 million guy. So Seattle saved a lot of money, so they can go out and sign some guys. There's going to be a lot of silly money like there is every single year, and all these guys, we're going to shake our head tomorrow. We think we're desensitized to the money, and we're not. So we're just going to see ridiculous deals to guys who, in a year or two, it's going to be just like Javon Hargrave. It's like, ugh. I mean, that Hargrave thing, what a disaster that was, huh?
Oh,
Yeesh.
my God. I mean,
It was
just,
terrible.
we literally, that day that he signed, we're like, how is anybody going to block a line that has Javon Hargrave and Nick Bosa? And it just didn't materialize.
No.
It just never really came together. Yeah, I'll say Cam Bynum as a safety that I think
Ooh, yeah, I like that. You brought that up earlier. That's actually a really good call.
Cam Bynum would fit, but I do think if push comes to shove, you got to have some money, you got to have a willing party, you got to have so I think DJ Reed I think is going to be a good fit. I think they'll pay him.
He's got an attitude. The Niners like that,
Yeah,
and obviously Saleh coached him.
You've got the Niners are unique because Demo wants to play the nickel. He wants to play inside, and DJ Reed's better outside, even though he has nickel capability. I just think DJ Reed. If I had to say DJ Reed, Tevin Jenkins, and Cam Bynum would probably be the three guys, and maybe Rondale Moore. I'll say Rondale Moore. As far as
they need a veteran wide receiver. There's no question. They need a guard because I don't think they're going to take one that early in the draft. Like you said, Greg was saying Tyler Booker. I just don't think they're going to take him at 11. But you need a veteran regardless of what happens with Ayuk. And I think Ayuk is going to stay, but regardless, he's not going to be there for a while. And I'm not relying on Ricky Pearsall and Jennings. You got to get another one. And I know people don't want to hear this name because it doesn't make them that excited. But a guy like Brandon Cooks, for example, who's been all over the league and he's from Stockton. He's got nice speed. He's reliable. He's a veteran. I'm not saying he's going to break, he's going to be awesome or anything. But what I'm saying is in the time that Ayuk is gone, you could do a lot worse than Brandon Cooks. He's still got really good speed. He's a reliable guy. He's a good locker room guy, and he's from Northern California. So, guys like that, I know people are like, they want to hear Cooper Kupp's name and all these different guys. And if you don't know, Devontae goes to the Rams today, Devontae Adams. But, a guy like that who's not going to break the bank, he can fit in until Brandon Ayuk comes back. He can fill in at a number of positions. He's got really good speed still. That might be a guy too.
No, that's a great one. I interviewed Cooks the year he came out of Oregon State. He grew up a Niner fan.
Yeah,
he's a Niner fan.
Yeah,
he grew up a Niner fan in Stockton, and he wanted to play for the Niners, and this would be an opportunity. 7 Dennis 123 says, "Wait till Saleh gets his hands on Mustafa. Oh, he's going to love him." Brandon the Fifth said, "No way the Niners would have let Rodgers back with Saleh." LOL.
No, hell no.
Don't see that happening.
Yeah,
Boxing fan times 4. Who do you predict as a shocking draft slide? A shocking draft.
I think you hit on him.
Slide.
I think you hit on him. Mason Graham.
Yeah, I think Mason Graham could.
Because early in the process, people were talking to him in like the top 5, 4, 3. And I think, like you said, he went to the combine where everybody overrates everything, and he had short arms, and he's not overly athletic. And all of a sudden, it's like, I think he's going to slide, and I think he will be there at 11. It's just a matter of what the Niners think of him and whether he fits things. But he was awesome at Michigan, and I think that's where we have these problems where these guys they look at the combine too much, they forget about the tape, and all of a sudden there's a guy sitting at 11. See, I'm okay with that because, as Daniel Jeremiah said, there's 24 starter defensive tackles. Starter grades on defensive tackles. Last year, he had 12. So you would think you could wait on a defensive tackle, but there's a handful at every position where they're elite, and that's different. So to me, if a guy like that were to slide to 11 because his measurables aren't all that, or the same thing with Will Campbell can play. I don't care what anybody says about short arms. The guy can play. Mason Graham, I don't care if he doesn't do this or doesn't do that. The guy can play. So if those type of players slide to 11 because of the perception of what is supposed to be the perfect player versus what's not. That's why in those ranges, and you and I have talked about this a million times, Jalen Carter off the field goes to 10. Micah Parsons falls to 12. Like Warren Sapp falls to 11. Laramie Tunsil falls into the, all of a sudden you're looking at a double digit in that range, and there's some reason why some guy doesn't go, and you snap him up and he's great. And I think if Graham drops from where people thought he was in the top 5 to 11, that even though it's a deep defensive tackle draft, and we could talk about linemen and what they need, and they may need receiver, that kid drops, you're taking him. I mean, you can't get to the podium fast enough.
I'll give you a couple that I think are going to drop. Shador Sanders, I think, is going to drop. His film is really inconsistent.
Plus,
Really
I'm
inconsistent.
telling you, man, people are not going to like talking to him.
He's very confident in himself. Ashton Genty from Boise, I think the Penn State game is going to cause him to fall. A lot of people thought he was going top 10. He's not going top 10. I think he's
a running back in a year that you've mentioned it a lot.
There's a lot of good running backs.
There's 15 really good running backs in this draft, man. I don't know why. Like, people now are saying because the Raiders have a quarterback that Genty makes a ton of sense. They're still terrible defensively. They're not good defensively, and I don't know. And I mean, they need a lot. Max Crosby, that's great, but they need
Colston
more.
Loveland, the Michigan tight end. I think a lot of people love him. I think he falls a lot. He's got two shoulder injuries. Shoulders are kind of a recurring thing. Yeah, those are the ones that stand out, I think, as the guys who are going to drop a lot. It's hard to really predict sometimes. I could see Cam Scatabo dropping maybe into day 3.
He's probably a third rounder.
I mean, he's probably a third rounder, but I think he could drop into day 3. I'll tell you this: if Tez Johnson doesn't run faster than 4.5, he's not going to go on until day 3 either, because he's just tiny.
Yeah, I remember Daniel Jeremiah saying, "Watch out for this kid. He's going to run 4.3," and then he ran like 4.55. And when what was he, 155 pounds or something?
155 pounds.
Like,
I mean,
dude, you can't be running 4.5 at 155 pounds.
No, that just does not work. We got this one. Claudaddy Arcades in the house. Claudaddy says, "LK, would you trade a 4th for Tanner McKee as at a minimum a backup and a sneaky potential replacement for Brock if negotiations go south?" I don't think Howie Roseman would trade Tanner McKee to the 49ers for a 4th round pick. I think Howie Roseman knows that Tanner McKee is his second best quarterback. I love Tanner McKee, the quarterback for Stanford who went to Philly. 6'6", very accurate. I really like him. I would trade a 4th. I would absolutely trade a 4th round pick for Tanner McKee, because I really think Tanner McKee's a future NFL starter. I don't think Philly would do that, though. I think Philly understands what he is. LD Studios says, last one, Fields to Egbuka, OSU. Look at Najigba.
Yeah, the receiver from the Seahawks.
Yeah, I love the way Najigba came. I mean, seriously,
his year.
He came on last year.
Yeah, but they're going to have to get
awesome.
Now all of a sudden he goes from 3rd, and he's got Lockett, and he's got DK, and he's in the slot. And all of a sudden it's like, who are we throwing it to? That's where I think Seattle did the right thing in moving Geno. I really did. But their receivers now, without Lockett, without DK, talk about a team that's in the receiver, looking for receivers, and all of a sudden they're all flying off the board so fast. You're not trading Ayuk to Seattle, but I'm just saying, like, right now, even New England's got a better receiver than what Seattle does. They have Smith and Jigman. That's it.
Oh, I know. That's going to do it for us. We're 2 hours in, and we'll call it right here. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show as well. Thanks to our spring training trip sponsors, Claudaddy Arcades. You can follow him at Claw_Daddy_Arcades and find a location near you. They got an arcade coming here to Northern California. And thanks to our good friends at LearnKey Upskill Academy. The links are in the description for all of our sponsors. If you want to support the show, definitely support our sponsors. We appreciate every single one of them for stopping by and being proud sponsors of the Krug Show. Johnny, I'll give you the final word, man. Tomorrow, it's going to be fast. It's going to be furious.
I love it.
All day, all kinds of news, all kinds of things breaking. What are you looking for tomorrow?
I'm looking for Dre Greenlaw to probably be a one-day guy that's gone. And it's unfortunate because I love Dre and I think he's great. But these numbers that just came out for these linebackers, and this is what I mean, and you and I have talked about for a lot of the show, is where is Jed going to draw the line? He's not drawing it at Brock Purdy. He's going to draw it at deals like Dre Greenlaw, where 3 linebackers signed today that are really good, and Nick Bolton, Ernest Jones, and Jamie and Sherwood, and they all signed between $12 and $15 million a year. And I had read something that the Niners wanted to stay in about a 3 and 24 range at about 80 a year, and that's just not going to be possible. He's the best linebacker, so if you're looking for a linebacker, he's really the only one left. I mean, there's a few guys left, but there's nobody like Dre Greenlaw. So by far, because the market did what it did today, that wasn't good news for the 49ers. So now you got a guy out there There could be a bidding war. I just don't see it. So I think that Dre Greenlaw, by 24 hours from right now, I think he's going to be a day oneer, and I think he's going to be a former 49er. Unfortunately.
Man, sounds like the Rams really badly want Greenlaw.
That would suck.
That would suck.
To have him go to, because he does. Look, he's coming off the Achilles, and you and I have talked about it a million times, and everybody watching knows. But he's an emotional leader in that 34 plays that he played, and Hufanga was on the field too. Like he gives you an energy that nobody else does. And so, can somebody pick up that slack? No, but it's not a premium position. They need edge rushers. They need offensive linemen. They need defensive tackles. They need an adult in the room at corner. They might need a safety. They potentially need a receiver. They need a lot. And although a lot of people want him back, and I'm sure that Robert Saleh does, and I'm sure that Fred Warner does, but I think that's a position of luxury for them right now. And I don't see that the way the linebacker market moved today, which it always does like this, but it's about twice what they wanted to pay for Dre Greenlaw. And I can't see that the Niners would go up to the number that these other linebackers got today. And there's no reason why Dre Greenlaw shouldn't get that same amount of money.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when you look at the value in the NFL draft, it's at linebacker on day 3. So you just got to remember that that's where the value is, and that's where if you're going to replace Dre Greenlaw, you got to find the next guys, and they're named Chandler Martin and Eugene Asante and David Benda and Nick Martin, and there's a bunch of them. There's 5 or 6 undersized, really good linebackers, and Niners have to go get themselves at least 1, maybe 2. All right, that is going to do it for us. Thanks to John. Thanks to all of you. Until next time, peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of.